meeting in a few minutes late. So if everyone will get their seats, we have a quorum. You ready, Gretchen? So I'm going to call the meeting of the Transportation Surtax Oversight Board for February the 28th, 2025. It looks like it's 9:42 a.m. With that said, I'm going to have our astute attorney here this morning give us a little update on our official action of approving the minutes because we don't have a recorder, how we're going to do that.
Okay, Mr. Chair, so as required by Florida law, meetings such as the Oversight Board have to have minutes, and there's no specific requirement that those minutes be verbatim minutes. They may be summary minutes. So since we don't have a recorder present at the moment, if the chair would like to move forward, we can do so and create summary minutes for this meeting. There's also a recording that's happening of the meeting through electronic means that will also be able to be posted for the public. So we'd be able to do summary minutes, which would just be things like on the action item, the board took a vote on approving the meeting minutes from these meetings. The vote was whatever the vote is.
I think in fairness to everyone's here, that's the way we should proceed. So with that, I think we'll go to general public comments on non-action items.
Call the roll.
It does say call to order and a roll call. Roy?
Good morning, everybody. Alan Hooper.
Here.
Here.
Thank you. Douglas Coleman.
Here.
Erdal Damas.
Here.
Phil Allen is online.
Here, and I apologize for the board. I'm not able to make the meeting.
Raymond McOver.
Raymond's here.
Thank you. Shay Smith is running a little late, and the appendant Wallace will be absent, and Ronald Frazier will be absent today. And Debbie Madden is here.
Here.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to move general public comments on non-action items. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak? Has anyone signed up, Gretchen?
No one has signed up to speak, Mr. Chair.
All right. With that, we'll move into motion to approve oversight board minutes. Do we need to do these, I guess, month by month by month?
You can do one vote covering all three unless there's a board member that has any corrections or objections to any of the specific minutes, in which case we'll break them into separate votes.
I'm going to do those individually, though, as far as anyone have any objections to the August 9th minutes or anything to add? How about the October 25th? December 11th? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval. A second?
Second.
I moved. Give me I'm sorry, I missed that. Who approved? Alan. Ordell seconded?
Seconded.
All in favor of all the minutes? Aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Our first presentation this morning is going to be Office of Economic and Small Business MAP Broward CBE Goal Attainment Quarterly Update. And we have back with us, since he missed the last meeting, Sandy Mitchell McDonald.
Mic check. Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. How are you? I'm going to try to navigate you here. Highlighted portions, because I always try to remind you that there's multiple processes we do with the county and the city, and there's a difference between a review and an award and a completed project. But please note, for your reviewed project, as of September 2024, you have a total CBE projected amount of $415 million. So for the projects that were reviewed, if all find their way to fruition, all find their way to activity. If we monitor each project with the county and the cities, that's an impact that would happen for those projects. For all that's reviewed to date, you got 103 projects for the county, 136, you see the dollar values. So this is where we always like to try to start you to then carry you to award it. So in yours, you now have the detail. Right now for awards since September of last year, you got 52 county projects, you got 50 municipal projects, and those are the dollar values for the projects that are actually awarded, the total amounts, and based on the committed goals, that's what will be achieved. So if every county project went to the end, every municipal project went to the end, the county would be hitting about a 35% goal. The city projects will be hitting about a 41% goal on what is expected 30% commitment. We always try to look at 30. We know some are going to be under, but this is saying if those go all the way through, the county projects will be around 35, the municipals will be around 41. Yes, sir.
I just want to point out to everyone that the municipal money, 77 million, may look like a small number compared to the county money, but that $451 million that the county is spending in the cities. I mean, maybe not, is it 100% or 98%? 95%. So I just want to point that out, that those may look like it's being spent in your cities. And I think that's important. At the end of today's meeting, I do want to talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to use this as a good example of what I want to talk about under Chair's report. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair, and that's a point well made. No. So coming out of the award, I do apologize. Coming out of the award, this would be then the economic impact. And I remember board member Allen, way back in the beginning, was always asking, based on all the activity, what would be those impacts? Guys, if each of those projects that we propose, so just talking about the awarded, projected for awarded vendors is $528 million. Then you talk about the jobs created. You talked about the additional generated activity. And I'll just give you a simple example when you start talking about in-plan. So fine, you got a project, you got a prime contractor, he used one of our small businesses, you got a 30% goal. That small business is definitely a business that's in Broward County. If that small business has a $10 million contract, at the end of the day, he's going to use some of that money to buy supplies and materials to complete his job. All, but certainly some live in Broward. So when they get that check, they're going to pay rent, mortgage, grocery store, gas station, Dunkin' Donuts. We're saying that you're committing the dollars, not just to complete projects. You're committing the dollars, not just to assure small businesses can participate. You're committing the dollars because at the end of the day with the sales tax, those dollars stay home. And that was a part of one of your commitments for the program. So this is the economic impact that we like to run based on awards. We're certainly going to run it based on completed projects because even we want to take a look back. Hey, this is what you said if all the projects got awarded. Now show me what those numbers were if those projects went to completion. And we would love for it to be a face-to-face, mirror-to-mirror, apple-to-apple. But some projects are going to stop halfway through. Some are not going to fulfill the same dollar value. But we still should be interested. For completed, what was that number that truly was an economic impact to Broward County? Why do I want to keep going backwards? So here's the thing that I did want to emphasize today, as I have a couple of things about the 5-year plan. But you need to understand the county, but I'm giving major kudos to our cities. They're not just meeting the goal. So remember, the requirement is 30. They might commit to 40. But understand this, 78.9, almost 80% of all of the commitments are exceeded. So even in the beginning, you heard people pushing back. They didn't want to do the 30. I politely talk about my friend, who our friend now in terms of weekly asphalt. He wanted to be around 10 or 20, but I showed you all the slides where weekly asphalt is doing 41, 42, 47 out of the 30. So I just wanted to be clear. I wanted everybody to make sure that they understood and they had a chance to see that with these city projects and county, but I'm harping on the cities for a reason, guys, they're not meeting my goal. They're exceeding the goal. Nope, I'm not saying every single city. But do I have the majority of the cities? Absolutely. Are we willing to work with the other cities? Actually, we're going to be doing a training later this year. We always do a training and we invite the cities and the counties out to talk about future projects because we want to galvanize and get the small businesses excited. This year in that same training, I'm bringing cities out. So cities can talk to cities about how the cities were successful, working with their primes, working with our small businesses, and being successful. Because when you see these numbers, these are what the commitments were and these are what the attainments were. So again, when you see someone when it was actually a 30% requirement, like the Wilton Manor, but the commitment ended up being 80%. But when the project was done, 92% was small business. That's folks working together. That's a prime in the city deciding, yep, there are enough small businesses, why not use them? So again, you started with a program that's requiring 30. Even with some pushback, there's a requirement of 30. 78.9 of all the projects are exceeding not just the goal, but the commitment. And the commitment is different than the goal. The goal is 30. Somebody commit to 40, they end up doing 60. The goal is 30. Someone commits to 80, they end up doing 92. That's showing that it really is working with our cities. And again, we're going to be giving kudos at the training we're going to do later this year. And I'm going to be asking the cities, please come in and tell us your ideas. Tell the other cities exactly what you do that will allow you to attain those numbers. And those are some more numbers. And again, we're going to be, and that's why you have the full report, but we're going to be posting these. We always post these if you follow us on social media. We're always throwing out the congratulations to the primes, to the cities, to the small businesses. But we do want to begin to show that 5 years in plus, it's not lip service. It's actually happening. No, I'm not saying every single one. But if I'm saying the majority, I have 85 to 90% of our projects on this trail, absolutely. So that's the reason why it's worth us continuing to work with the other cities to see what the challenges are, to see how we can help them, and to create more opportunities. Lessons learned for the first 4 to 5 years of where we need to go next. And because of the projected projects, especially things like you have going on with Primo and the connector rail and the others, getting enough advanced information so that we can begin to target throughout the county, throughout the state, and sometimes outside, because this is also about workforce development. If we're going to have the larger contractors and the larger industries coming in because we have activity for 22, 23 more years, then we want them to come in. But we also want them to understand the small business program, but we also want to understand what is the work employment, the work development opportunities that comes out of this. So our marketing plan is about making sure we continue to galvanize, expanding where there's opportunity for business, especially small throughout the county, the South Florida and the state. But then some of this with some of my other economic development partners is really going to be about how do we talk about projects that are going to be coming down the pike that could excite businesses of considering maybe a relocation or just another office opportunity right here in Broward County. And these are some of the different things that we described in the 5-year marketing plan that we would do that would try to get us there. And one of the key things is not just attending conferences and trying to be signature where we can continue to talk about it. It's really coordinate the opportunities with our highways and our roads folks and our Broward County transit folks, and even when aviation from time to time, when they have map projects and we can forecast some of those opportunities. How soon can we get out? Making sure that we're not just speaking as an office about small business, but the business development side of making someone know that, hey, it's not about one project. For all the things you're looking at for the next 23 plus years, you might really want to consider relocating here. So these are the conversations I have with my partners, like the Alliance and our partners in terms of my other EDO offices and the economic development offices of the city, because again, it's also not about small business. It's just as much about creating career paths and jobs. As a couple of my commissioners say, even these projects are creating high wage paying jobs. And that's something that Broward should have an interest in. So again, those are our contacts, ways to get in touch with us. I probably should have had one extra slide, but May 9th, since we're already into March, tomorrow, May 9th, will be the annual conference at the Convention Center, the Broward and Beyond Business Conference. Matt Broward always supports us. He shows up, but this is a chance where we had a couple of members who attended a year ago, where there'll be 900 plus businesses throughout the county and the region there to really just try to understand who we are, what we do, what other resources are available, where they can get technical assistance, and to learn more about our office. So with that, I thank you for allowing me to go first. Love you, but you know I got to leave today, but I'll entertain any questions that anybody might have.
Does anyone have any questions, Sandy? I have a quick one.
Yes, sir.
You identified some of the cities that aren't able to make the 30% goal, and you're working with them to do that. Have you identified any particular problems in that group that make it almost impossible for them to comply, or do you feel that in X years you'll have everybody?
I do, because I don't even, thank you, Mr. Chair, I don't even classify it as a problem. It is challenges. Some of the cities aren't the size of the other cities. Some it is about notification. Some it is about understanding the program. I get it. We've done a training now with every city, but also cities are no different than my shop. The person I may have trained 2 years ago is no longer there. How did that information transfer to the next person? So the cities are also no different than the county. I might have an agency that's responsible, but by the time it gets to procurement, was there still a connectivity or was something lost? I'm just saying, for whatever the challenges are, we definitely want them to bring that to us. There was a couple on your slide. Some of the challenges about not meeting is also about the specifics of the actual project. Remember, we said about the 30. Everything will not have a 30% goal. You saw some of my 8 and 9s. It's not because I didn't want 30, but the reality is, if it calls for a specialty, and I just don't happen to have it in my directory, I can't fake it. So that 8 was real, even though they did 9. But what's the opportunity? For whatever that project was, that was an 8. And we now know those disciplines. We believe another project might come up down the road similar. So it gives me a year, 2 or 3, to try to build small businesses who can meet the capacity for what was missing. So it's no one thing that's keeping them from getting there. That's why I'm excited the majority are getting there. But it really is, without being a cookie cutter, an opportunity to find out where the city is, to find out where the primes are, to find out what small businesses I have available. And if given the chance, we can make sure that proposing a goal can be a commitment that we can make. But if not, at least we know we went through all the steps. So it's nothing that just failed through the gap. It's just the idea that some actually won't be there for a lot of different reasons. But we're willing to accept that and work with them.
Well, congratulations, but if, in tongue-in-cheek here, once you set your goal to 50% and you meet it for everybody, you'll be out of the job, right?
Right. So goal me out of a job, right? Okay, gang. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Our next item is low-stress multimodal mobility network master plan update. And I have to admit, I'm a little confused about low stress, the words and how it means something. I think I've agreed with it, but I need a little help with low stress.
I think you would agree with it. Just to give you a little bit of an update. So low stress is a term that we have started to see emerging in transportation planning and design. And it's all about creating facilities that are all ages and all abilities. Now, this is a little bit above and beyond what initially Complete Streets was aiming to do for. So Complete Streets initially started asking for 4-foot bike lanes. Now we're finding that 4-foot bike lanes on roads that are 45, 50 miles an hour are really not what people feel safe using. So, and actually today that's what I'll be talking about, is what the perceptions are within Broward County. So I'll go ahead and get started. So good morning. I'm Josette Severin. I'm the contract administrator for the Low Stress Multimodal Mobility Master Plan. It's a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. And just as a reminder, this project formerly was referred to as the Greenways Master Plan. The project was competitively solicited after having several rescoping, revision efforts. And, you know, this was actually a blessing because this allowed us to look at the Greenway Master Plan scope, allow for it to evolve to create better geographic equity, expand the scope, and incorporate comments from the board and from the public that we heard. So for example, board member Shea Smith talked about he really wants to see facilities that are created, separated, but adjacent to the roadways so that he could bike with his children to destinations. And then you also had your efforts and involvement with the City of Fort Lauderdale Lauder Trail Master Plan, and we both were part of that Lauder Trail Master Plan working group, right? Which allowed me the opportunity to be able to understand the framework that Lauder Trail was using, and it allowed me to build in consistency between the projects so that we could expand those efforts countywide. So what we aimed to do with this project was incorporate the board and the public's interest that we heard at these board meetings to enhance bicycle and pedestrian facilities and the connections to transit, as well as being able to get to destinations safely, comfortably, and conveniently. So a big thank you for all of you, because that's the continued support that I've heard from you throughout, whether you knew it or not. So thank you so much. Just a reminder, this project is funded by constitutional gas tax and surtax. It acts as an in-kind match to the collaborative federal grant with the MPO, the Broward MPO, the Safe Streets and Roads for All, where we were allocated $5 million to create safer roads for all through the Broward Safety Action Plan. And our prime consultant on this project is Marlin Engineering. They're actually headquartered here in Plantation, and they have a great team of experienced sub-consultants that were brought on to represent different areas of expertise in their fields, which would allow them to have the successful development of this master plan. So, and as Sandy mentioned, we also have a 30% CBE goal, but we have a 37% CBE commitment. So we are hoping to exceed as well. So now this master plan, like I said before, is not your ordinary multimodal master plan. We're focusing on connecting people to destinations by strategically planning a network of active transportation projects and developing design that people of all ages and abilities will feel confident using and will have a higher likelihood of electing to use. So this master plan will offer guidance and inform multimodal investments, which is one of our 30-year Surtax program's main goals as presented to the voters over the next 20 years. So keep that in mind. This will be a master plan for the next 20 years. So the vision for this project is to create an inclusive, low-stress, multimodal network for all ages and abilities. Safety, comfort, convenience, and inclusiveness have guided us through this process as foundational principles. And today I will review with you the public comments and perceptions obtained through various public and stakeholder engagement methods we've deployed to date. We have collected and analyzed from the public and stakeholders through community outreach events, focus groups, public meetings, technical working group meetings, stakeholder interviews, crowdsourced map efforts, and a public survey. We started our efforts by informing the public about our project and collecting feedback on their experience walking and biking and what would encourage them to walk and bike more. Some of the feedback we received expressed the need for more bike ped infrastructure, greater separation from traffic, shade and amenities, and overall expressing safety concerns. Based on the initial feedback from the community, we decided to dig deeper and host focus groups to have a better understanding of people's concerns and desires. People want infrastructure that increases safety, comfort, and convenience and is inclusive. They have concerns with the existing infrastructure related to gaps in bicycle infrastructure, maintenance and upkeep of facilities, perceptions of safety, inconsistent infrastructure treatments and lack of connectivity. They want design to prioritize safety for multimodal users, and they want it to be with a user-focused design. And they also desire separated facilities, targeted safety improvements in high crash areas, coordinated crossings, and funding flexibility to do more projects. So the funding flexibility was probably the municipalities weighing in on that one. They desire connections to high-density areas and destinations. They want to see age-friendly, safe connections to parks and recreational destinations, and enhancements to cross-cities routes beyond their neighborhood. So one of the goals Broward County had originally with the Greenways Master Plan was connecting sawgrass to seagrass. And we can see this through the public outreach that we've done. People want to see movement across the county. Further, they recognize that walking and biking have health benefits and social benefits and use it as motivation. They spoke of walking or biking as ways to relieve stress while getting physically active. They talked about the social benefits, it was good for mental health, being able to interact with other people along their walk and bike as like a social activity, not only a commuting activity. The benefits of just being outside, and with the more people who walk or bike, the safer the experience feels. So that safety in numbers aspect is really, really important. So the next activity that we did for engagement was a crowdsource map. This was to gather information from public and stakeholders on bike-friendly locations they'd like to see more of, areas that need improvement, and suggested improvements. And the suggested improvements were things like, I want to see a new route here, or I want to see lighting here, or there needs to be end-of-trip facilities like bike parking in these locations. So those are just some examples of those. As you can see in the image, we received more need improvements feedback, but the positive in this is that almost a quarter of the comments were positive. They identified locations as bike ped friendly, which are those locations that we're going to be looking more into as to what makes them bike ped friendly. And the remainder of the comments that you see, the ones in blue, those are the ideas, the suggestions for improvements. So each pin that you see had a selection of checkboxes, and those checkboxes had categories that were derived from our focus groups. So we really tried to strategically take all of our public engagement and stakeholder engagement efforts and integrate them all to build upon each other. So some of these groups were safety, accessibility, connectivity, and maintenance. And we use these themes, like I said, to build on the data in a strategic way. For the locations identified as needing improvements, the top challenges identified were related to uncomfortable or perceived unsafe crossings, vehicle speed, facility conditions and presence of facility, lack of connectivity, and transition concerns with ending infrastructure. So that's sort of like when your bike lane ends before you get to an intersection and there's not a great way to merge with traffic. So people want more. They want safe crosswalks to use, wider sidewalks, lighting, shade, and amenities. They want separated bicycle facilities and obstruction-free lanes, improved signage, dependable and consistent bike facilities, bike parking, and they want shade. Shade was a big component that people kept saying. Other improvements they want to see are ADA push buttons, improved drainage, bike ped only streets, and more road safety education. Speeding was identified as a really big issue. People want to see more traffic calming measures and complete streets projects. Intersections were another big topic of discussion, and the need to reduce ped bike delay at intersections. They want bicycle facilities to continue through the intersection instead of ending on the approach. And there's a big desire for connectivity to destinations. So this means having continuous bike lanes, continuous sidewalk, curb ramps, and so forth to connect you to these destinations and have those dedicated facilities to get there, including transit stops were a big component. So concurrently, as the crowdsource map was deployed, our public survey was active. We also had our public survey active to gauge public perceptions, needs, and wants, and gather information about the public on their travel behaviors. The survey had a statistically significant sample size with a 95% confidence interval and a 5% margin of error. The survey was quite long. It was 33 questions. Multiple of the questions were Likert scale questions. Are you familiar with Likert scale questions? These are questions that are a series of questions, and they ask you to scale it based on strongly agree to strongly disagree or scale similar to that. So as you can imagine, while it was 33 questions, it was actually a bit longer than that because there are a series. To disseminate the survey, the team utilized stakeholder distribution methods, email blasts, social media posts, social media ads, iHeartRadio announcements, and outreach events. Our sample was found to be representative sample of Broward County. As we expected, parents filled out the survey for their children, and over 65 demographic had similar proportions to the county overall. We found that the gender analysis to be comparable, as well as a strong representation with folks with disabilities compared to the county. Every zip code received participation in the survey. And the majority of respondents, almost 70%, have lived in Broward County for 10 plus years, with 81% residing in Broward for 5 or more years. So these are people that live here. We asked about mobility device ownership. The majority of the population owns a mobility device, whether it's a bicycle, an electric mobility device, or another device or means of conveyance. In terms of folks walking, bicycling, or other methods of mobility, we can see a number of respondents do use these daily and often, but those numbers can always be improved. So we gauged people's tolerance and time to walk to destinations, and we found that people will walk longer distances to get to parks, entertainment, and jobs. We asked folks the same question for bicycling. The interesting thing about this question is that folks responded highest to bicycling to transit within a 10-minute period, which is equivalent to about 1.5 miles. So this would really, really help with our reaching destinations from transit and accessing transit. So I loved this question because it highlighted people's want to connect to transit. Now, when we ask respondents to tell us a little bit more about their perception of safety while walking and biking, we found that over half of the people felt their immediate community was a great place to walk. But this is their immediate neighborhood. Once they left their neighborhood, people largely agreed we need improved facilities that make it feel safe to walk or bike. We need crossings on busy roads that feel safe. We need infrastructure that parents feel safe, are safe for their children to use, and this is beyond their immediate neighborhood. So of the 20% of respondents that reported having children, we found that 7% walk to school, 9% bike to school. And this is great because this is actually better than the 2017 national average. But think about the potential that we could reduce congestion related to drop-off queuing for schools. This could be huge. We can expand that number. So as part of that, I want to make a plug for Public Works, and that they are doing a great job conducting improvements to school zones, which is the Surtax initiative, and they've done a number of those, so that's really great to see. So how often are people walking in Broward County? Almost 50% of respondents reported walking to a destination a few times a week, and about 75% already walk for fun or exercise. So this is really great. People already have the habits to walk adopted. So along with the desire to walk to destination, there is a strong case for increasing walking for utilitarian purposes if we can make real improvements beyond our immediate neighborhoods that resonate with our residents. These improvements should be influenced by these results here, identifying what's important to them. And if you have a printout, it might be easier to look at that than the screen. I'll give you a second to look at this. All right. So what about biking? 75% of respondents are interested in biking. Of the 17 that said no, they're not interested, and they provided a reason as to why they're not interested, the highest percentage identified that their lack of interest in biking was not actually because of a lack of interest. It was because of safety reasons. So their perception is right now, with existing infrastructure, it feels dangerous. These are people that may be converted to interested or may be interested if the right infrastructure and conditions were in place. In fact, 60% of survey respondents said that they strongly agreed that they would replace some of their driving trips with walking, biking, or a mobility device if facilities felt safe, comfortable, and convenient. And that figure increases to 70% when you add in the agree category. So remember, we did a Likert scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree. So overall, folks want to see protected, dedicated bike paths that feel safe. Improvements to the network that need to be considered are based on these results. And with that said, our low-stress design manual will take all of these results into consideration as the manual is developed. So overall, we can summarize what we've heard from the public into a call for action for improvements in our infrastructure, in our standards, and criteria for low-stress design here in Broward County. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Anyone have any questions or comments? Alan?
So there's like 3 more pages after that. Are you going to do the question and answer now, or are we going to, or just like?
I think those were supplemental. What were the?
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So this is a good example of what level of traffic stress is. So level of traffic stress is a measure that was adopted by the Mineta Institute in Minnesota. They've developed this criteria, and FDOT adopted this criteria as well. So these images came from FDOT's quality level of service manual. And so the idea is that people have different tolerances to stress levels, whether it's walking or biking. And so an LTS4 category is often called the strong and fearless category. So those are folks that are considered experts that will go out, and those are your spandex cyclists, right? They're the ones in Lycra that are going to go out and they're going to ride miles and miles and miles and miles. This is not what this plan's about. While we took their input into consideration, what we're really aiming for is an LTS1 and LTS2. And if those two are not possible, in LTS3, because the LTS1 is a group considered children and elderly. LTS2 is a interested but concerned adult group. So maybe this is an adult group that that would like to bike more if they had really great facilities to use that they felt safe on. And the LTS3 category is probably your person who is a little bit more confident to ride around, but not yet the expert level. And the same thing can go for walking. Usually in walking scenarios, what we see is people walk on LTS4 conditions because they have to get to transit, right? So they might not have sidewalk, They're walking on the edge of pavement, or they're walking on the grass, or wherever they can. And a lot of times what you'll end up seeing are these like goat paths. So these are the paths that people are walking down like consistently. So the pedestrian level of traffic stress is more recently developed than the bicycle level of traffic stress, but it built upon the methodology. And then the other findings that we had, these were just examples of what were most popular. So when we were in a 25 to 30 mile an hour setting, people really thought that a grassy landscaped buffer in a neighborhood, a residential street, was really the most desirable. And this is actually consistent with a lot of the research literature. People like to walk down tree-lined streets. So it's not surprising that this picture was the one that was most prominent. And then the next category was 30 to 35. So when we were looking at this one, what you can tell is not only is the sidewalk wider, and this is actually Hollywood Boulevard, it was a recent Complete Streets project. They have on-street parking, which acts as a bigger buffer, and this is a wider sidewalk, and you can see that the degree of separation there is a bit more profound, right? And that's with a higher speed and higher volume road, and that's really what you want to see. And then we have this 35 to 45 mile an hour road. People said they really like this shared use path that's over here that has a dedicated bicycle facility area, and it's separated from traffic. And you can kind of see it, but there are new trees that were planted there. So eventually those trees will become bigger, and it'll be shade and canopied, and a lot cooler and comfortable to walk down. And then the last one is we looked at intersections. So what people really wanted to see were characteristics that were in that picture. So really kind of highlighting where the crosswalk is and having shorter crossings, because you can see in the picture it kind of narrows at the intersection to decrease that walking distance. The same thing for bicycling. So if it was a lower speed road, then the Old Dixie Highway implementation in Fort Lauderdale is a great application. So this is a 20 to 25 to 30 mile an hour road, and a bike lane, 5-foot bike lane is sufficient, right? That's what we saw people were resonating with. And then when we were looking at the 30 to 35 mile an hour, they wanted to see a bit more of a buffer. You know, people driving in 30 to 35 miles an hour roads are probably not driving 30, 35 mile an hour. So they wanted to see greater separation there. And then the next category was 35 to 45. This is where you see something more like a cycle track, a bikeway that people really resonated with. And it has a little bit more horizontal and vertical buffering. So those are a concrete median with there's like a wave pattern that creates a little bit more awareness that you're getting close to that concrete median right there. And then the last one is an intersection view, and that's the protected bicycle intersection. This is a concept that FDOT is working on in design now to bring to us, and we have been collaborating with them on what that looks like. So hopefully all these items will become part of our design manual. All right.
Okay. Can I go? Okay. I'm sure Shay's going to have a lot better stuff to talk about than me, but I'm going to cut in front of him. So, one, the one that's the 25 to 30 mile an hour bike lane, which is pretty much found all over the county, Fort Lauderdale, Bayview Drive, US 1, you can just throw those away, because I have kids and we live off Bayview, and when they were little, we went on the sidewalks because too many people are texting and driving. So one mess up and you've just taken out a life. So if you're going to do those on slower streets, I think you still have to put those cone bumpers so that when someone veers off, they feel it on their wheels and they get back in their lane. I think that it was funny, we were just talking about how Apple Computer in 1990 only had 4% market share. Well, electric bikes right now have a very small market share, but they're going to have a very large market share in the future. And people are buying them as they become cheaper, as they become cooler. People are buying them and driving them to work. And my problem, and I like to ride my bike, is getting from commercial and getting to downtown and thinking, okay, well, you can go down Bayview because there's a bike path, but then I got to figure out what other roads I'm going to do to avoid Sunrise, and then so I'm going to cut through Victoria Park. It gets really crazy. We have got to find paths from like downtown to Sawgrass, from east and west, north and south, and maybe. And I love that you guys are going here because it sounds like you're thinking what I'm saying. So I'm probably preaching to the choir here. But if we could just do 1 or 2 north and south and 1 or 2 east and west first and make a pilot out of that, and I think it will perpetuate this e-bike transit that people love to do. I see them cruising down Andrews, and they've got no barrier. And God bless them. God protect them. But if we could do that, if we could find like 1 or 2 and really do a good job. And the other thing that's going to be hard is getting over the I-95 bridges. Maybe you have to find like Sistrunk or 19th, or there's certain streets that go under the I-95 that you can maybe make it part of the system. But we couldn't do this soon enough. Between scooters and bikes, if we could make that a priority, and I'm glad we're going here now because before we kind of had a resistance of going here, I think this is like the best, and I congratulate the work you've done so far, but hopefully we can actually implement it because this county was built with no bikes in mind, and the right-of-way that's left in some of the earlier developments is very, very rare. Out west, Plantation, you've got that right-of-way that you can potentially do that. We might have to decide to take 2 lanes and make it into 1 wide one and make the sidewalk and the bike wider. But anyway, thank you very much. I really appreciate this study.
Thank you for your comments.
Shay, you have anything?
I'll try not to go on a whole diatribe here and just add a little bit to what Alan was saying. But yeah, this is really my passion area. I mean, technically here for accounting, right? But if you look at my application to this board, it was all about advocacy. Maybe 15 years ago or so, or even longer now, we started a nonprofit called Bike Walk FTL, and I was very passionate about bike walk issues. And it's a tough sell, right? However, I think tides are really turning, and I see now, and especially an older population, interestingly, out on electric bikes. Like, you've seen this really grow over the years. One thing I think we really need to emphasize, to echo what Alan was saying, was the connectivity and using the back neighborhoods as like a trail system where you don't have to do as much. I mean, that's what I found working on the Lauder Trail project. It started as something that was kind of simple and then started to become almost too complicated in a way. So it's like we need the facilities, but we also need to educate people on the paths that are safer, where we already have that capacity there. This is such a good step towards our density issues because there's nowhere else for cars to go. There's not really a lot of room to keep building roads, and we have more capacity than I think what people realize. Something that I've noticed over the years, like you mentioned, I just happen to know Fort Lauderdale more. You mentioned the Dixie Highway Fort Lauderdale project, right? We have a propensity in the county to build facilities and take nice pictures of them and then let them go into disrepair, right? So Dixie's a great example. We put the green path there, and now it kind of looks like crap, for lack of a better word. It hasn't been maintained, and it wouldn't take that much to maintain it. but it's to stay with it, right? To say, hey, we built this. Here's how it connects to this, and here's how it connects to this. I mean, I can leave my house in Fort Lauderdale and take very safe paths going through 3 or 4 cities, right? Before you know it, you're in Oakland Park. Before you know it, you're in Pompano. I can easily go from where I am all the way up past Atlantic Boulevard and feel perfectly safe, and I have ways to do that. I think most people don't know those ways, and they end up buying an electric bike or a regular bike, and they end up on Andrews or they end up on US 1, and some of the stuff we've put in is literally just super dangerous. I mean, to put a Shero on US 1 and make it look like that's safe is a trap, and it's a travesty, because it's really scary to think that people are going to think that people care that there's a Shero there. They don't care. You can't share the road on US 1, right? So we've got to kind of re-educate people. I agree that the demand is going to just keep going up. I see so many more people out there trying to take advantage of the roadways, so I do really appreciate the work and connecting to other facilities. And I think as a county-led group, we have an opportunity to be that connection point, right? To show how does this all connect together? How can we put together media campaigns and show someone going essentially across the county in a safe manner? So I'm excited about this. I'm glad that it's part of our regular agenda now, and that we're pushing it forward.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Alan and Shay. They said it perfectly. I want to dive into some things. Obviously, I agree with everything here on this. So is this going to be a manual or a plan? Or is it 2 components? You're developing a manual and a plan?
Yeah, so we're creating a master plan, and then there's going to be a low-stress design manual. So the low-stress design manual is going to be above standards. So generally when engineering creates a design manual, it's based on minimum standards. So this is going to be unique in the sense that it's going to be above standards. It's going to be defining what we at Broward County have defined as low-stress implementation and design. So that's going to be one. We're also including a companion piece for placemaking. It's going to be a placemaking toolkit to help guide municipalities on how they could personalize these routes and make them more appealing, more engaging. And that could be done through a variety of things like landscaping. It could be art. It could be functional art. It can be a number of different things. So it'll be interesting to see all this come together, and we'll be doing a lot of outreach to the municipalities to see if we can build up their support to connect to the spine network that we're going to be creating.
When are these documents going to be ready?
So our project is going to be concluding in June, so we'll have documents to review.
So then these documents, this manual will go to the county commissioners for a vote for acceptance?
It will eventually go to the county commission for adoption.
And
Correct.
will you craft the wording so that when the county commission, if they do accept it, and I think we should send a motion of this board or whatever the thing is to say a transmittal letter, that we want to see this adopted, of course, if everyone agrees. But so I'm going to go back to 2 things. 2 things really strike me, right? The Surtax board was created with the intent of creating better infrastructure. And then in your survey, 89% of people in Broward County say this needs improvement in this particular area. So this is a very captive market, and the Surtax board is also in line with that. So I think there's full faith that the county commissions accept it. But if they do accept it, will this become the new design standards, or will the highway engineering be able to piecemeal and take what they want out of it? Or how do we make it so that every road that gets redesigned hits these maximum standards consistently?
Josette, can I? So I'd just like to respond, first of all, to how the actual master plan gets adopted and accepted. We are in discussions about exactly how that's going to operate. We actually just had a conversation, I think within the last 10 days. There's a complete streets team that exists inside of the county, and it was adopted as the result of county commission action. this plan is something that we see as very similar to the Complete Streets team efforts, something that will move through the Complete Streets team that already exists. And as Josette mentioned, it's also acting as match to the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. So we're trying to line all of these things up in a way that allows all of our partners, state, county, and municipal, to have input. Our county commissioners are obviously going to want to have input. How exactly that happens is not known to us at this moment. So I just want to be clear about that. And then how people utilize this information, these are guidelines. At the end of the day, what we are developing are options, they're guides, they're manuals, they're not going to necessarily be requirements. The cost feasible plan that comes out of this is something that we're going to bring back here so that you all understand what the Surtax program is capable of building with this. But just like everything else that we do, we're going to be relying on other funding sources. We're going to be relying on other partners in the community, both state and municipal, to help us put this plan together. And I just want to make sure that that's really clear on the record.
So like she said, it's the design manual is going to be what we are going to approve as low stress design. If it doesn't meet our criteria for low stress design, it will be designated as low stress design, if that makes sense.
So Gretchen, but can we send a whatever the letter is to let the, oh, I'm sorry. Can we send a letter or whatnot to, I guess, Monica Sapero or the commissioners to let them know that the Surtax fully embraces this plan?
Well, I mean, the fact that the Surtax is funding the plan indicates that the Surtax program supports this effort. When it's completed, it's going to come back to you all again, and at that point, it would be appropriate as part of your overall transmittal letters to provide any input that you would have. But it's not done yet.
Okay, that makes sense.
Just one more quick comment. I think that this is an opportunity. I mean, we're all here as volunteers, right? And as residents of Broward County. I think this is an opportunity for again, activism and getting more people engaged. Because what it's going to take is people in each city that care about this showing up and speaking to it and wanting this, right? I think that's what's going to really push this. And at this point, I mean, we haven't had a ton of public engagement. I've seen more as we've gone on with the process, but I think this is the opportunity that we have, right? It's like, how do we engage more people that will utilize this and get them involved to advocate for themselves and what they want, right? And I think that's where we could have a powerful role here. You know, maybe we can do some events where we invite the public in and get more people engaged. Maybe we can go out to the cities and try and engage people, engage different communities that are out there riding, walking, and using the facilities. I think that's what it's going to really take, because that's, you know, that's who people are at the cities where it starts are going to listen to at the end of the day.
Thank you. Gretchen actually answered my question. Where do we go from here? Very impressive presentation, findings, consistent with every objective this board has, and we would like to make everything possible to accelerate these projects, programs, improvements. But it's a great undertaking so far. Thank you.
This last issue is the important topic, and that is, how does this information get implemented? And I know you're doing things. This will become kind of a guidebook for new projects to be designed in public sector, et cetera. And it'll take time. I have a lot of good and bad things about California, but when you're driving out there, if a pedestrian steps off the curb, you better stop. I mean, I don't know how they do that, but we need that thing here. We don't have it, but maybe we'll get it with more of this. A little comment about the green sidewalks and the sherrits. they may not be good, but they're better than nothing. And it's a start to educate the public. That's a bike lane. And that shared is a continuation of a bike lane. At least you can get from A to B. You may not get there as safe as you want.
Dude, you're going to get killed.
Well, it's better than having no green and no shared, okay?
Okay.
So with that said, but the idea of this report getting implemented into the design early on, and somehow we change the philosophy of our drivers is what's going to need to happen. Alan, you want to say something?
Yeah, just to answer, if you put something there like Shay said, it can become a trap. You might go somewhere thinking it's safe and it not be safe. So it's not. I don't totally agree with you. But before you comment, I had something else I wanted to say. So are we going to be producing some form of a conceptual map of bike paths that connect areas to each other?
Yes, so we actually have a proposed low stress network that has been created, and it incorporated existing infrastructure as well as looking at projects that were programmed in the Transportation Improvement Program, the Surtax, as well as some of our own capital improvements that we have planned here. So we've done a lot of analysis based on what we know is to come, and making sure that all those connect. And then, like I said, the municipalities are going to be a major partner on this, because one of the big things that they can do is create what Portland or Denver has done, the neighborhood greenways that can connect to some of these other major arterials or minor arterials that will hopefully have some infrastructure on it that increases the likelihood of people feeling comfortable, safe, and so forth.
And I want to just make one point. This is the purse. The surtax is the purse, okay? And depending on cities to build something that's part of a plan is like waiting for developers one at a time to build a sidewalk down 2 miles of street. It won't happen for 2 decades. So I think that we should be building it, to be honest with you, the county. And I think that we should not shy away. This is, to me, over anything else, this is probably the biggest thing, because it's going to motivate people to use an alternative method of getting to work, going and having fun, going to see their friends, whatever, working out. And we should not shy away from being super innovative and and raising the bar beyond what we have seen in the past. And what I mean by that is pedestrian bridges, adding attachments to existing bridges that add a pedestrian method to the bridge rather than it being just for cars, so that you can get over I-95. City of Miami is building one of the most incredible bridges you've ever seen. They've done it in Denver. They've done it in California. They do it everywhere where people want to be outside. And so I think the county should lead it. I think the county should be pushing to do it. And if no other city wants to participate, do it on the county roads, do it on the state roads, and we should be building it. We shouldn't wait around to expect that the cities will all get on board and do it.
So I assume there's no problem spending surtax dollars for all this, Nathaniel, right? Okay, with that said, even though the green bike path and the shared is not as safe as we'd all like, when I see it as a driver, I recognize that there's going to be bicycles on that road. So to me, that's helpful. It's a start.
True. You're right about that.
Anybody else have any comments? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, one technical question. I recently found out about Chapter 202 of the Florida Design Manual, the speed management section.
Mm-hmm.
Will this work in conjunction with that new chapter, or will this go above and beyond?
So ideally, everything that we're doing is going to be above and beyond, but the Broward Safety Action Plan is creating their own safe streets design manual, And for anything that I don't cover in the low stress design manual, they'll likely be covering in that design manual as part of the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant.
Okay, okay. And then Gretchen, will those be kind of going at the same time then? They'll kind of get combined?
They're concurrent. So the WPS team is kicking off their kickoff meeting for the design manual March 11th. And so the work that's being done on the low stress design manual is going to be coordinated, and we've already had several coordination meetings with the SS4A team to be able to kind of integrate those but not duplicate.
Okay, awesome.
Anybody else? You're set. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Next presentation, near-miss traffic accident identification system study update.
Mr.
Dr.
Chair.
Sanjay Ranka?
Yes, if I could just ask, because Dr. Ranka is going to be doing this presentation remotely, we do need to do some technical setup. Could we just take a very quick 5-minute break so that we can do that?
Certainly.
Thanks.
Taking a 5-minute break. If we could reconvene, are our speakers available?
Yes.
Everyone take their seats, please.
Could we ask everybody in the audience to please sit down? Thank you.
Item 3 on the agenda, right? Near-miss traffic incident identification system study update. Dr. Sanjay Ranka and others.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Min Tong Li, Broward County Traffic Engineering Divisions. I'm the project manager of the near-miss pilot study. The near-miss pilot study is fully funded through Surtax and is also serving as matching to SS4A efforts. As you may already know, near-miss is a risky traffic event that usually do not cause crashes. The University of Florida is tasked in this study to evaluate the near-miss technology that may assist county staff to proactively address safety concerns at intersections. The study was executed back in February 2023 and is expected to be complete by the end of June this year. Dr. Ranka from University of Florida is going to provide you a quick update on the status and initial finding of the near-miss pilot study today. With that, I will hand over the presentation to Dr. Ranka to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Thank you for the committee to let me do the presentation online. Unfortunately, I could not be there in person for personal reasons. I hope you guys can hear me well.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you again for the board to fund this study. Just to give a background, a video-based system to analyze traffic at intersections. In particular, the system uses fisheye cameras which were already installed at several intersections in Broward County. And what this analysis tool does is it analyzes all the near misses of the severe events. Then today are two broad things. One is the cost of running the video analysis as well as the hardware requirements in terms of what kind of CPU and GPU requirements are there for processing some of those video-based techniques. And second thing is results on two intersections where we did a before and after study using this technology, and on both of them we show events, and our working assumption is that that should lead to a lot less crashes. So just to bring folks up to speed, the video is coming from the intersection. This is an example of a video being captured we use AI and machine learning techniques to track all the vehicles as well as the pedestrians and other bicyclists and trucks and things like that. We classify them. From that, what we do is we create a trajectory database of all the pedestrian movements along with vehicle movements. And whenever two trajectories kind of intersect with each other, and if the car is very near to a pedestrian or a car is very near to another car, then we can use that to determine whether there was a near miss or not. We also look at other factors like whether the car braked, that is significant reduction in speed, and things of that nature. And using this analysis, we're able to look at both vehicle-to-vehicle intersections and potentially pedestrian-to-vehicle intersection. And we classify them separately as a vehicle-to-vehicle severe event or a vehicle-to-pedestrian severe event. So what we did here was we looked at complex intersections. These were with large number of lanes, and most of them had dual cameras. And we looked at how to detect phases in terms of where the turning lanes were, egress, ingress of all the traffic coming to an intersection. And one thing which we wanted to find out is these are NVIDIA GPUs, which are very expensive. So we did a study to first see how many streams of video can one GPU handle so that we can share the same GPU if you want to scale this to county-wide to how many intersections. And we were able to show that up to 8 streams can be supported by one GPU. So assuming that if an intersection has 2 video streams coming in, then one GPU can support 4 intersections. And this is, of course, under the assumption that the video cameras are already present. Then what we did was we looked at and say, hey, let's look at intersections where there are a large number of pedestrians. And what we looked at was the Sterling and 66th Avenue intersection. We did the analysis and we found that there were lots of pedestrian to vehicle conflicts, especially with permissive turns. That based on the study, we worked with the county folks and we figured out that it makes sense to add a sign for a northbound or westbound lane turns. So effectively on this is the intersection. As you can see, it's a very complex intersection with lots of lanes, some left turn lanes, some right turn lanes, for example. And so this signage was added. This signage was added, turning vehicles taking left, stop for pedestrians, just as a warning sign for all the vehicles coming in. Similarly, here is a turning vehicle, stop for right ones. So this is what we were able to, these are the different signages which were added based on the study, because the study found that these are the turns where there were lots of conflict between pedestrians and vehicles. And then what we did was we looked at the near miss rates. This is showing you along the x-axis is the hour of day, and it's showing you conflicts which are happening per hour. And as you can see, there are 7 days, so there are 7 charts like this, or 7 lines like this. And it's not important to see each of the lines, but what's more important is that these are the P2V, pedestrian to vehicle interactions, which went down by a large amount overall. As you can see, these were averaging maybe 5, 6, 7 per hour. Now they're much less, and I'll show you more details on that in the next slide. And similarly, the V2V ones also, you can see here, as you can see here, the impact on V2V was a lot less. The main thing which is signing was averaging is the P2V anyway. So we expected that, we were hoping that would actually lead to a larger reduction. So you can see this now. This is average over day by day rather than hour by hour to give you a better clarity. These are, again, pedestrian to vehicle interactions. And you can see that roughly on each day, the number of these conflicts per 1,000 vehicles went down by a factor of 3 to 4. On an average, we were able to see a reduction of a factor of 4 in terms of these vehicle to pedestrian near misses. that's amazing. I mean, this is really much better than what we expected to happen based on the study, because our working assumption is that a reduction in the number of these near misses or severe events should have a direct impact on the number of accidents on this intersection if you did a really long-term study. One of the reasons for doing a near miss or a severe event analysis was just that these are good proxies for accidents. Accidents obviously fortunately happen infrequently, but if we can look at these proxy events and reduce them by a large number, our hope is that this will lead to a lot less such accidents at that intersection. We repeated the same study. So if you look at one of the things which you can see now, the left-turning vehicles, how many interactions they are having, you can see that that number also went down, and the right-turning vehicles went down to pretty close to zero, and even the through vehicles, you can see the interaction went down by a large amount. So all three kinds of situations were drastically improved because of signage. Important part to notice here is that the vehicles do pay attention to the signage, and they were able to actually, because of that, their behavior changed, and because of that, these number of near misses went down. We wanted to see whether this thing actually can be done on other intersections. So we started work on the second intersection, the Sterling Road and 68th Avenue. Again, we did the analysis slightly different but somewhat similar. Right-turning vehicles often did not yield to pedestrians. Pedestrians conflicted with left-turning vehicles. Pedestrians often cross right in front of a through vehicle. So all these things happen. And again, this is a pretty complex intersection with a large number of lanes. So two cameras were able to support this large intersection. And again, what we did was, based on discussions with the county folks, we decided to add the signage, and these are the two places where the signage was added. And based on that signage, then we studied and say, hey, what happened before and after? And again, you can see, rather than looking at it hour by hour, overall the trends are that the P2V interactions went down, and even the V2V interactions went down quite a bit in this particular case. So if you look at that again at an aggregate basis, again you can see the same trend, that overall the number of conflicts between the pedestrian and the vehicles, the severe events went down by a factor of 3 to 4, depending on the day of the week. So what this is clearly showing is the value of this whole technology. The technology can figure out precisely how many near misses or how many severe events are going to happen on that intersection, so you know what is happening today. And then if you make any changes, in this case we added signage, but clearly there are other opportunities, for example, to add more pedestrian time during the time when there are more pedestrians crossing. For example, if there's lunch hour and there's a McDonald's across the street, lots of people are going to be crossing for lunch, and if you figure that out, then you can add more time for pedestrians. So all those things are possible choices one can make. We obviously limited ourselves to only one choice for this study, and you can see again that based on that changes, we were able to improve safety for all of these situations by a large amount. So this kind of validates the whole technology and is used in improving safety at traffic intersections. We were able to do a before and after study that signage changes led to reductions in severe events. And also we showed that the cost of the hardware, which is required for processing the video, can be amortized over multiple intersections. I'll be happy to take questions at this juncture.
Raymond. Hi there. I wanted to ask a few things. How much are the GPUs?
So the GPUs cost, we did an analysis of the GPUs. This GPU which we analyzed was around $3,000, but then we were not worried about how many intersections it will support. Then we did a proper background analysis to say that if you buy one GPU for around $2,000 to $3,000, it can support something like 4 cameras or 2 intersections.
And then after the data, let's say we do like a treatment for each intersection, could we just reuse the GPUs for another intersection, or you think it's worth collecting the data?
I think it's definitely, we can do a mix of both. we should collect the data maybe every 3 months or every 2 months. But on the other hand, if you're doing a 2-week study, we use it for one intersection, then the next 2 weeks the GPU can be used for another intersection.
And then this is to the county. Do you think this is something we should scale? Because I don't know the statistical analysis of the significance of the data, but if the near miss incidents are dropping that much just by increasing signage.
Okay, that's a loaded question, so let me get to it by tier. Okay, we haven't really established the relationship between near misses with crashes that indeed occurred. We believe that if we reduce near misses, crash will be reduced as well. But exactly how much, we haven't developed a relationship exactly at this point. And we don't even have any kind of guess. So, so that's something I want to lay it out front first. Now, we do have planned to continue this assessment to develop mobile units, because right now what we have utilized are static cameras that got installed at intersections for traffic control purpose. We want to make those cameras become mobilized, and we can deploy those cameras to the intersection that we intend to analyze. So with that, we can be more flexible, and we can go to even more complex intersection to conduct this type of analysis. So there will be a next tier of assessments, and we hope that we can get a more confirmed or final say on how effective the technology is going to be later on, because it takes time to observe crashes happen. As some of the members may know, most of the typical safety assessment, they will utilize 5-year crash records. So those short-term improvement that you see, those signage that get deployed by FDOT, by the way, that portion of Sterling Road is a state road. So there are many interaction and communication between county and state on this, and we managed to deploy some of the short-term safety solution, which is the signage at this point. But there are other suggestions that more like a mid and long term that haven't been implemented yet. So it takes time to observe exactly how effective the technology is going to be. Exactly how long, I couldn't tell you exactly, but I would say that we still need time to get a better understanding on the effectiveness of the technology at this point.
To Mr. Ranka, do you think you'll be able to find correlation in time with this amount of money we're giving you for the grant? Or do you think this grant won't be able to cover that?
So you're talking about the correlation between near misses and accidents?
Yeah, like to find conclusive data from your study. Or
So
have to be a
clearly the study is very limited in terms of being able to find that correlation, because fortunately the number of accidents which happen are very low. But there are nationwide studies, and again, I don't remember the exact number, but what they say is that for every 100 to 200 near misses leads to one serious accident or fatality. And these are nationwide studies, not obviously limited to not only for Broward County. So because again, the reason for that is that you need to have a statistical significance. And for that, since the ratio is 1 to 200, that means we need to see a lot of near misses and correlate them with the accidents. But if you look at the nationwide studies, it clearly demonstrates that reducing near misses helps.
So I guess either of you guys, rough timeline, like I know you said you couldn't do a timeline, but like what is the timeline for something more conclusive? And then if the data proves conclusive, this seems like a no-brainer for $3,000 to tap into our current infrastructure, we can start decreasing crashes.
You want to go ahead? Okay. I think from our perspective is that we need more time to complete. For example, the mobile units, that it will take. We want to take a couple years, if possible, to get a more confirmed conclusion or assessment on how the technology is going to help us to reduce crashes. But keep in mind that there are many moving targets at this point. For example, it takes time to deploy safety solutions. They are shortened, but typically those low-hanging fruit won't introduce significant impact. Okay, so the other mid-term and long-term, it requires resource, require time to implement, and it requires time to see the effect. So it's not something that we can get it done quickly. I couldn't tell you exactly how long we need at this point, but maybe Rossum has a better answer than I do.
Not for that one. Good morning, everyone. Ross Amawad, Director of Traffic Engineering. Just to build off of what Dr. Lee mentioned, the second phase, which is going to be more on a mobile base, will hit more intersections, because this was limited to 6 intersections where we had those fixed devices, which their primary purpose is sensing vehicles. We just kind of tapped into that. We don't have them elsewhere per se. So the mobile units, as we get more of a larger sample size with more intersections, I think would be very telling. So the next phase hopefully will expand our statistical significance, if you will.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
thanks.
Yeah,
I have a question. Based on what appears to be the success of this intersection, can you extrapolate that to other intersections that are just like it, so that you know what signs to put up in those? And the second question is, based on this study, how many more intersections or different types of intersections do you feel you need to look at to do the same thing? Are we at 5% or we're at 10%? But to me, I don't know how many more intersections look like this, but looks like you solved those. So where are you in the process of this study so you can satisfactorily say you've done as much as you can?
Well, I think the study concludes in June, so it gives us a little more time and a sample size for continuously assessing the effectiveness of these signs. What's going to help us with this near miss overall is the engineering judgment, to your point, to carry it over to other intersections. Because generally we look at crash history, right? That's kind of the federal standards, but there's always room for engineering judgment. And that's where we either send someone to observe these near misses, or this would be more a continuous, much better data that we have at our hands.
So you actually know what intersections are bad, right? Is what you're saying?
Generally
speaking, based on
yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah.
And those should be the top priority of looking at if they don't match this intersection.
Exactly, exactly. And to your point, the signs, are as good as their enforcement, ultimately. So there's that aspect too. And then you never want to oversign because it loses its value. So these are the things we juggle around when we assess these.
It's oversimplified. I didn't quite hear it. What was the cost of fixing that intersection with signage?
That was carried out by the Florida Department of Transportation because they own this intersection, but I don't know if we have an estimate on the cost.
Signage alone isn't a big number, but like I said, they're.
Well, I mean, how much each 66 and 60, what is it, 10,000, 20,000? I'm just curious. Because it seems like a reasonably cheap fix for as much data as you said.
A sign assembly like you saw is just a couple of $100
Thank you.
tops. Yeah.
Anyone else have any comments? Erdal? No?
Can we ask you guys to come back at the end of the study in June and give us an update? If Mr. Ronco is okay with that, or maybe just the county themselves, whatever it may be, so we know the conclusion.
I would be happy to come down.
Okay. Is that something we need a motion, or how does that work?
Staff will take that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Progress.
Thank you.
Major Surtax funded projects in Port Everglades and Fort Lauderdale-Hollywood International Airport region. This is very dear to my heart, and a few other people probably. I don't have who is presenting. How many different presenters do we have on this, Gretchen?
Mr. Gale, Mark Gale is here, the Director
Mr.
of
Gale's
Broward
here.
County Aviation Department, and he's going to be giving you an update.
Welcome.
There we go. We good? Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Nice to see you all again. I was asked to come give a quick update on projects that we have been previously appropriated Surtax funds, namely the automated people mover system and the Intermodal Center at the airport. When I appeared in front of you last year, I had indicated that we had just been given the green light to begin one of the boxes that we needed to check, which was a very lengthy and arduous environmental process, the NEPA process. We've been cleared to move forward with that. I think Ms. Madden would probably agree that can be long and painful. And in my briefing to you, I said that we anticipated completing that process in December of 2024. We hit that mark. We did complete the process with the FAA. Our environmental assessment came back with a record of decision and a finding of no significant impact on that. I know who I am now. At that same time, I indicated to you all that as we were working through that environmental process, waiting to see what was going to come of that, we were also working on multiple sets of corresponding documents. So each one of those major projects gets a couple of guiding documents to it. One document is referred to as a program definition document, essentially spells out what the program is, its goals, its objectives, and how we expect to deliver that. And the second document typically involves what the solicitation process is going to look like for the project once we kick it out onto the streets. The program definition document, or the PDD, for the automated people mover system was drafted and completed. The program definition document for the Intermodal Center is nearing completion. Over the course of the last, 6 to 8 months, I've had some of my staff actually going to different locations where automated people mover systems have been constructed around the country, getting the lessons learned, some of the horror stories, try to make sure that when we get ready to build arguably what's going to be a much needed but expensive program in order to move us into the 21st century, we wanted to take all the knowledge from around the country with a number of experts and pull that into our program. That's what's going into those documents as we speak, today. The automated people mover system, again, as a reminder, the Surtax value on that was $213,750,000. We've begun actually moving those funds around and putting them from the Surtax into our capital funds and drawing down on those to support these planning activities so that we can get ready to move into implementation. Mr. Hooper referenced a little earlier when I was listening about electric bikes and essentially the market share that may be small today but big tomorrow. One of the things that we're trying to plan for the future is, let's say in the Intermodal Center. The Intermodal Center is a 4.6 million square feet, 8-level facility with 7,000 parking spaces, and there's going to be a nexus, a hub of activity that goes on there. And we always think about ground transportation, but one of the emerging technologies in this country and other countries right now is eVTOL, or electric vertical takeoff and landing, where you essentially have Ubers in the sky. It's rapidly advancing, and it's not going to be too long in the future we're going to see some of those types of electric vehicles flying around in this area. And we're incorporating that technology actually into the Intermodal Center as well. So we've taken a step back. We just want to make sure that we get this right as we move forward. Corresponding to the development of those key documents and moving out, I think I also indicated to you that the funding, the larger share of the funding for these projects comes from airport revenue bonds that we float, or GARBs, General Airport Revenue Bonds. And those revenue bonds are typically backed by the revenues at the airport, largely backed by our airlines that operate at the airport. So we have a long-term agreement with our airlines. They have rights that go along with those agreements where they look at our projects and they work with us to figure out how much support they want to give those projects going forward. We're coming towards the end of that agreement. So we've been in discussions about them about what the next agreement looks like and to get their support for these large-scale projects. I don't have something to report that we're across the goal line today, but we're getting close. Discussions have been good. They've been fruitful. They cover a wide range of topics. So I'd be happy to come back in a few months' time and give you another update on where we are on those things. We are also watching, like the rest of the construction world, impacts from escalation, inflation, seeing projects go up in cost and how we're going to cover those costs, watching that very carefully. The impacts of tariffs that are pending to see what that costs for additional steel or other types of raw materials that would come in, all of which will have impacts on the project. As of right now, we're still targeting the 2030 timeframe for the completion of these projects to have them online. The airport remains a very, very, very busy place, notwithstanding some of the issues that some of our larger carriers have been facing of late. We're hoping that I use aeronautical terms like turbulence, that the turbulence smooths out here a little bit as we go forward. But by many accounts, 2025 is anticipated to be a record-breaking year in air travel, not just in the United States, but globally. So when we have some of our major partners that are going through a little bit of a rough patch right now, we anticipate that with population growth and continued demand for South Florida, the airport's going to continue to grow. We need to support the projects that are taking place with my good colleague and friend over here, Corey Cup-Lonergan, and rail and surface transit, as well as PEGs here from the port. As we connect the airport, the Seaport, and the Convention Center all together, we need an airport that's going to continue to grow and support the needs of the region at large. So that's where we're at right now. We're consistent with the timeline pretty much that I laid out for you last year. And you're going to see more from us as 2025 goes forward, with the anticipation that we're going to be hitting the streets with solicitation documents here this year to be able to actually get the work under design and development. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Alan? Senator Dowell?
So you mentioned, Mark, thank you, by the way, for the update. You mentioned that you're going to do bonds and surtax. Is there any federal money that you're going to be looking for?
So I neglected to mention that one of our strongest partners in all of this is FDOT. Two reasons. Funding that comes from FDOT, they've already put forth approximately $163 million earmarked towards the automated people mover system, and we're in ongoing discussions with them for additional funding, not only for the people mover system, but also for the Intermodal Center. Right. We were able to work with FDOT to secure a special designation for the Intermodal Center, referred to as a SIS or SIS Hub, a Strategic Intermodal System Hub facility, which gives it the ability to compete for funding on its own, like other SIS hubs. As we've now gotten through the environmental process and we're getting ready to move into the formalized design development of that, that's what FDOT has been waiting to see. And we've been talking to not only Secretary Perdue and his team for the state of Florida and others on the multimodality aspects of the Intermodal Center so that we can try to line ourselves up for funding there. We're also in conversations with the FAA. We all know what's happening in Washington as to whether or not grants are going to be withheld. Right. Thankfully, to date, nothing has been withheld from the airport. We were fortunate to be the recipient of two major grants recently, a $50 million grant to help us construct the post-security terminal connectors between T1 and T2 and T2 and T3. That project is underway. We've broken ground on that, and we'll finish that in the next 2.5 years, and you'll be able to get completely behind security through any one of our terminals that you come through. And then we also identified we were going to get an additional $16 million to help us with the replacement of passenger boarding bridges to connect the terminal to the plane, right, to replace some of those that are going forward. So we continue to line up additional resources. But of course, Alan, as I said earlier, the lion's share typically comes from what we believe will be airport revenue bonds going forward.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Allen has a question as well.
Hello, you got me?
I can hear you, Mr. Allen.
Okay, hi, Mark. Question I have is, with all of these various projects that are within a certain geographical region around the port and the airport, how are you interfacing and you know, all of these projects they seem like to be fingers on a hand now, but at some point in time you've got to get to the arm to make these things work. And with the uncertainty going on relative to federal funding and federal budget reductions potentially down the road, how is this being coordinated among the various entities?
When you say all of these things, the other projects, are you referring to things like Commuter Rail and the Airport Seaport Connector?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Traffic on the Commuter Rail,
right.
South, all of these projects that just seem to be independent of each other. We don't get a view, I don't have a view right now, of how these are going to interface. Around the country, you know, there's a history of these things falling apart, whether it be the Boston Tunnel, the Big Dig, the California high-speed rail project, the Alaska Bridge to Nowhere, where pieces of it get done, but then they sit there because the other projects aren't ready to go. I mean, how are they going to interface, and how are you monitoring that on an ongoing basis?
So Phil, I think you asked this question previously, and I'll stick with my same answer. We, as the CEOs of our respective organizations, whether it's myself, CEO Mars over at Port Everglades, CEO Lonergan with our Transportation Transit Division, we're fortunate enough to all work under the auspices of one single county administrator as direct reports to her and a county commission. We have teams of people that are in our planning and development sections that are meeting on a regular basis to try to make sure that as we work in some cases independently on our projects, we did make a very strong business case to the environmental regulatory agencies that our projects had what is often referred to as independent utility, that we didn't need to have every single one of them looped together in order for it to be successful. In the end, they do work better if they all are synergistic at the end of the day. And to make sure that we are going to hit that synergy, we continue to work with Administrator Sapiro, Assistant Administrator Kelleher is here, Corey's here. We all work as part of the same Broward County team, and I'm confident that we'll be able to make sure that we don't get out of sync. And
each one of these projects also have program managers that come in from the outside to provide support to the county staff. But there's nobody, it seems to be there's no one consultant or program manager that is charged with the responsibility of keeping these things flowing smoothly between the various entities.
Respectfully, again, I think that all of us being part of the same Broward County team to the same Broward County administrator, we have the ability to do that. It's not uncommon in looking at major airport projects, at least from my perspective, let my colleagues comment. It's not uncommon to have entities like airports work together with seaports, work together like with rail lines or surface transportation companies, and potentially even the Marine Division. CEO Morris and I, much like his predecessor, CEO Daniels, are in contact almost every single day, and we continue to discuss our projects to try to make sure that we're going to deliver them again in fine fashion for the citizens.
Well, as an example, I guess my concern here is that when we ask for a status update, we continue to break these projects into pieces rather than a project update that talks about the overall program. For instance, when the funding comes through for Surtax money for the roadway, the bypass road, everybody's represented except for the port where the project is occurring at the port. But yet, when we get a status update, we don't get that input of how that's affecting other operations at the port. Just as an example. And the same thing deals with the light rail. which goes right through the port, but yet I don't know what the status of how that's impacting the development of terminals or parking lots to support the transportation piece of it, cruise terminals, etc. So I guess it's just.
Kevin is Assistant County Administrator, might be sneaking up behind me, Mr. Kelleher. We'll echo, I think, some things. Kevin?
Yes. Good morning, Kevin Kelleher, Assistant County Administrator. And Mr. Allen, we've had this conversation before, as Mr. Gale had indicated here, that while these are all different projects that have independent utility, there is a lot of coordination that goes on that part behind the scenes that we have, where we coordinate between all the different agencies. And you mentioned a couple of projects there that you'll probably hear a little bit more a little later today. But those are all done whenever we're doing something out at the port. We are coordinating with the port. And that's one of the benefits, as Mr. Gale also indicated, that having an airport, a seaport, a Convention and Visitors Bureau, a transit agency, and a public works agency all under one umbrella. Actually, I think it's the only one in the country where all four, the big four there, are under one county administrator. And that's what's really important, because it allows us to work together. And
well, I touted that in 20 years of financing those various projects through the county and talking to everybody else. That we're fortunate to have that. I just want to make sure that continues to be a consolidated reporting mechanism of some sort.
And I can assure you that we are coordinating, all the time. Time doesn't go by on any one of these projects, and it's different matchups all the time. So like right now, when you're talking, about the airport, there's a big connection with the airport and transportation because of the commuter rail line in there. So, and then when we are dealing with the bypass road that has to deal with the convention center and also the port property. And so that has public works, the port, CVB. So we have different mixing and matches, but there's a lot of great, exciting projects going on in the county right now, and they are being coordinated. But we also have to realize that each one of these are individual projects as well too. We want to get them through the completion. So it all does roll up, and it keeps me awake because happy enough it all comes under my working with closely with Monica to make sure that these projects do get done.
Well, in my experience, Mark, Kevin, is that you're extremely capable and competent, and you've been there for years. In fact, I had the fortunate ability to be involved in your original appointment to the county position. But I think as these projects continue to go forward and grow and reach hopefully construction, that there needs to be increased coordination going forward. It's just a matter of focus and also strategy as it relates to when a project that we have programmed here falls aside because there's no matching funds or supporting services. How does that affect the other projects? Do they go independent of the People Mover or of the Intermodal Center?
And it depends on the projects, but the ones that, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, no, it depends on the projects, but most of the ones that you mentioned all have an independent utility, and that's part of what we went through to get funding, so they can operate on their own. Ideally, it all works best together, and having everything work through that. But these, you could have these projects work independently.
Okay. Thank you.
Raymond? Mr. Gale, I have one question when it comes to the design. Oh, sorry.
While Kevin is at the mic, just to add on to what Phil has mentioned, I think county has an exceptional history of managing public resources with consistent highest bond ratings. and also managing difficulties, challenges, and big projects, undertakings. I think the concern is not really how these projects individually or collectively, be managed, throughout the process. What happens when a sure matching funding, whether state or federal level, don't materialize? Do we scale down the project or delay it or look for other funding sources, like airport, revenue bonds, you mentioned. So I think this is not just your presentation. This is just many projects this board is, is dealing with. We would like to have, more frequent, updates, because what is happening in Washington, D.C. is like seismic changes. And so instead of waiting maybe every 3 months or every 2 months updates, and we would like to have, more frequent updates. So we're in the loop, just throughout the process.
Fair enough. And just so you know, whenever you do any large project, and particularly with a political climate that we have, so whenever you work on a large project like this, you're going to have somebody who's going to pull the plug on it.
Place, wrong time.
Whether purposefully or accidentally, plugs will get pulled, and you pivot. I mean, that's in any one of these, and it's, whether you look at them as all one big project or separate discrete projects, you will have to pivot. And there's a lot going on in the political climate now that we are looking at. What do we do? The what ifs. That's not, knock on wood, that's not where we want to go with it right now, because we have our financing plans. But if we have to pivot, we will get together, coordinate, and come up with the next strategy. And some of that may be shifting to another project out of sequence. Some of it may be delaying it just to make sure we have stuff. Some of it may be, project, design and maybe scaling back. We haven't crossed that yet. Luckily enough, we're going forward as planned. I had conversation with, Director Lonergan yesterday. It's, we are going forward. A lot of this stuff's out there. It impacts it, but you still have to keep going forward. So at the appropriate time, you're ready to strike when, the funding's ready. So that's why we are looking at all those different options. Thank you.
I just want to applaud you guys for just leading these large capital projects with the uncertainty of the federal stuff. It seems like a big stressor. This is just probably a little late, or maybe too early or too late. I don't know. But for the Intermodal Center, I didn't see some in early diagrams if there was bicycle access. And I would like there to be bicycle access because we're investing a lot in the Broward Commuter Rail Line South. And it would seem amiss for the people who live in Dania Beach. The nearest station to them would be, as the crow flies, the Intermodal Center, but they would have to take the Hollywood station because they wouldn't be able to access it without a car. So for all the people on the bikes and e-scooters, so like when you guys do your design, if you can possibly think about incorporating a large amount of bicycle parking and wayfinding for other alternative modes into the station.
Sure. Thanks for the comment, Ray. It truly is going to be a multimodal facility. We have other forms of ground transportation that we believe are going to be operating out of the Intermodal Center. We are immensely busy with things such as rideshare today at the airport, along with taxi cabs and shuttle buses and couriers and things along those lines. But when we talk about the connection to the Seaport, the convention center, we talk about connection to either commuter and or intercity rail. It is truly going to be a multimodal. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the eVTOL, advanced air mobility aspects as well going forward. So
So there will be some bicycle stuff.
We're gonna, I will take that comment back. We're not in the design development just yet, but we've been working long and hard with our friends from FDOT. Not everybody understands or knows that the land that the Intermodal Center is going to be constructed on, that loop that you come in when you come into the airport, is state property. So we are working on the business arrangement with them to actually lease that land from the state to construct that. And part of the issue is how do we provide access off of US 1 north and south, in addition to other forms that might come in from the backside along 7th or 10th, going forward. But when you think about roadway congestion at the airport, one of the beautiful things about the Intermodal Center is with 7,000 parking spaces, with automated connectivity to the terminals, to the rental car facility and whatnot, we'll be able to capture a lot of the traffic that's coming into the airport before it actually even gets onto the airport roadway system. So when you come down a roadway system that was built for 1980s traffic and is trying to handle 2025 traffic, and you see congestion and delay, the future of the airport, if we go from the 35 million to the 52 million that we're expected to realize by the year 2035, we want to try to capture some of that before it even comes into the airport proper itself and have it go directly into the Intermodal Center.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gale.
Great, thanks, Fred, appreciate it.
So looks like we're going to have a chance to do it right, since it isn't built yet, for far as bicycles are concerned. Josette's still here, so I know you're going to be seeing her a lot.
Yeah.
A couple comments. One, did I hear you correctly that by 2030, the Intermodal Center and all this will be reality?
2030 is the time frame for let me back up. The environmental finding was for what we refer to as the FLL landside projects. And while the Surtax really addresses the Intermodal Center and the automated people mover system, there were all host of other projects that are included in that landside development. We have the demolition and the reconstruction of the Palm Garage, and the creation of a commercial center to be able to take advantage of our high volume cruise traffic, primarily, that gets off of Peg's and Glenn's and Joe's cruise ships at 6 o'clock in the morning, come over to the airport and don't have flights till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so they're just sitting around. We're going to provide them opportunities to be entertained, to be fed, to have a better guest experience when they come through our facility. It involves major redevelopment of our airport roadway system. As I mentioned, right, the roadways at 3 lanes coming through the airport for the amount of vehicles that we're handling, 40, 50, 60, 80,000 cars a day. It's just insufficient to handle that. So those other projects are also included in this environmental finding so that it's all captured. But we're trying to stay on target for the delivery of the automated people mover system and the Intermodal Center by the year 2030. The automated people mover system is being done in 2 phases. A day 1 operation, we anticipate it'll operate in what we refer to as a pinched loop configuration. You can think about a big, long U shape that just runs back and forth like this. It won't be completely circuitous until later. And the reason it won't be is because the Palm Garage sits in the way of making the full loop. And we don't want to take the Palm Garage completely down until we have replacement parking in the Intermodal Center ready to go. So as soon as the Intermodal Center is ready to go, we'll operate the people mover system in a pinched loop capacity for probably about a year till we knock down the Palm Garage and then finish the loop off. I can't forego the vertical asset that exists in that land right there, so we come back up with a new Palm Garage after we put a new roadway system in, a new Palm Garage with even additional parking and the other things that I talked about, the commercial center and whatnot.
So what you're saying, as long as we don't fall into the trap that the port dredging is, we should be online for
Perfectly
2030.
fine. Absolutely, yes. We're going to have a really aggressive schedule, and to Ertle's question and Kevin's, our plan of finance typically, because we operate as an enterprise fund, because a lot of the airport revenue bonds fall back through the way that we run our rates and charges, and that debt service ends up running through our model and picked up by the airlines. We're looking to the best case scenario, take a view that we're not necessarily going to say, I wish I had all this federal funding, and say, start a project thinking you're going to get 25% federal funding, and you only get 10% federal funding. And to your point, it will take probably a more, not a pessimistic, but a guarded view that if we have to cover it with bonds, and we do, and then if we do happen to get the federal funding, it lessens our demand on bonds going forward.
I'm not finished, but Alan wants to say something.
I said no, I'm okay.
Okay. Good. You done?
Yeah.
I'm a little
Alan's
more.
going to be the first one on the advanced air mobility to take the air taxi.
I'm a little more optimistic about this whole process of coming together because of one county manager project's success, as Mr. Keller has pointed out. The other reason I'm optimistic is we have a lot of funding sources. The surtax is only part of it. In fact, I don't know if anyone knows the percentage, but a fairly small part of it. That's the good or bad news. And we're leveraging our money quite well. Do you know what percentage, Gretchen, the surtax is of this multi-billion-dollar
You have it in your binders, actually. Everyone has the leverage report, and there are two documents. One is a multicolored document that reflects all of the major projects that are surtax funded in the vicinity of the port and the airport. The other is the leverage report, which we give you every time you meet. And while I don't think I would be comfortable speaking to the percentage because we don't know what the total cost of the project is going to be or whether or not any additional surtax funding will be requested for it. But it is significantly leveraged. The assumption is that the surtax will be a smaller portion of the costs associated with those two projects.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you very much, Mr. Gill.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you. Take care.
Light rail.
Yeah, maybe. Thank you, Gretchen.
Hello, Corey.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Chairman Coleman and fellow board members, good to see you all again. First, I'd just like to share some good news with you. So the first thing is that, you know, we are so grateful for all that you do for the community in your respective roles, and more importantly, what you're doing to support us as we move forward with a lot of major investments to improve mobility in Broward County. So one of the things that just happened, actually this week, is that we received first place award from the American Public Transportation Association for our one of our campaigns to educate the community on Earth Day about our bus system. And so the reason I'm sharing this with this board is because you're so generous with us to allow us to have the marketing dollars. And I know that that is something that's been near and dear to all of you, to make sure that we're out there promoting what we're doing. And to have this national recognition is just so incredibly important to us. And it's the first time in our history that we've ever had it. So we're super proud of that. And we've got a great team of people that worked on it, and we're grateful to them for that, as well as yourselves.
Congratulations.
So the second other good news is that every year we have what's called a safety rodeo. And this rodeo, it's spelled ROADEO. It is to recognize the very professional driving skills that a lot of our bus operators, not a lot, all of our bus operators exhibit on a daily basis. So there's a competition where several of them come together. There's an obstacle course. They have to go around this obstacle course, and there's certain things that they have to do during this process. So we had our event recently, and then we went to the state championship, and one of our operators, who's a 5-year employee with us, his name is Cedric Davis, he won Rookie of the Year at the state competition in Gainesville. So we're super excited about that as well.
Did he get a raise?
Does he get a raise? Not yet. Don't give me an excuse. No, just kidding. So now we're going to talk about the light rail project, which is why I'm here. And then you kind of already heard about the coordination that we've all been working on I'm going to do a deeper dive into this project. I will tell you that we are in the middle of a procurement right now on this, so some of what I'm able to share, I'm under a cone of silence, so I have some limitations, but I'm going to give you as much information as publicly available at this time. So I just want to remind you of the strategy for Primo. So the light rail project is a very integral, important part of our Primo program. We are always wanting to make sure that we provide safe, convenient, and reliable service to our community. And the strategy here is still in play for Primo. There are 5 goals for Primo. I always like to remind people of what they are because it's really important to understand where we started and to make sure that we're consistently applying these fundamentals to all of our projects. As you may recall, it's mobility for all, it's implementing equitable transportation solutions, improving the safety and security of our environment, making sure that we provide opportunities for economic development, and then lastly, that we integrate and serve our communities. Again, back to Primo, just another reminder, here's at the end of the day what we're looking to gain. We're going to have 200 miles of new transit service, new premium transportation service. We're expecting a ridership of roughly 23 million on that service. We're looking forward to 100% electric bus fleet. That was part of our original strategy. I will tell you, as I spoke about at the last meeting that we've had some challenges in that area. That plan is as an aspiration at this point, and we're looking at ways to get there as soon as we can. Looking at new intelligent transportation systems so that we have some prioritization out there for rapid transit. And then lastly, the fundamental goal here is that we're not an eyesore to the community. Who wants to sit next to or build something next to something that's grotesque and ugly and big and, you know, unpleasant? And so we really want to make sure as we move forward with all of our projects that we're recognizing the aesthetic character of the community in which we are in, and then incorporate that into all of our designs. Okay, well, light rail, first part of it, the first leg of this project connects our major economic centers, Airport, Seaport, Convention Center. And just another reminder, you know, we were part of the American Public Transportation Association. That's who gave us that first place award. But they also do a lot of great research on projects of this nature. And through that research, they're able to figure out what additional benefits of those projects are when you make these types of investments. And so what they have done is they found that when we invest $1 billion on projects of this nature, you get roughly over a 20-year period about 49,000 and so jobs associated with it. So that's a stat that's pretty impressive. They're not only, you know, new construction jobs, but, you know, there's design, there's ideation, there's operation, there's maintenance. So these jobs are in place over the full life cycle of the asset. These programs definitely are a catalyst for economic development. They're a foundation for transportation-oriented development. And in our case, what we'd like to leverage that for as much as we can as providing affordable housing, which is one of the pillars of our county commissioners. And as we all know in this room, that is a tremendous opportunity for the community-based and small businesses here in Broward County. Just a reminder of the phases of delivery. I know some of my colleagues here on the board are also engineers, so this is very familiar to you. But I'm bringing this up because, which is the light rail project, we are in the planning / NEPA development, project development and NEPA stage. So this is where we're next step for us in that process. And so what we're here to talk about today is the pink project on the right of the screen next to the green and the yellow there. center at the left that will connect all of these things together once we get it built. So getting into the Airport Seaport Convention Center, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be roughly 3.5 miles. It will be an elevated fixed guideway. It is, we are looking for, and as part of this next phase of the project, for a place to house and maintain our vehicles. The delivery method, because we are, as you know, we run buses. I think we do okay with running buses. I actually think we do pretty well with running our buses. However, what we don't run are rail systems. And so rather than try to ramp up and do that, there are experts and organizations out there that do have these resources for us. So this project is slated to be a design, build, operate, and maintain. So we would have a third-party provider do this service for us. We are looking at a completion date initially of 2028. Clearly, that is not where we are right now, and we are working to adjust the date for delivery. The cost of the project we anticipate being roughly around $1.2 billion, and that does not include the maintenance facility.
Is that just for the hard pink, not the dashed pink?
That's just the hard pink and only the 3.5 miles that we're here talking about today.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so where are we with this project? So the current status is that we put a solicitation out for a consulting firm to help us with our project development, environmental work. And during that process, we'll get a lot of great information on and some very concrete methods and things to move forward. Our proposals were due back in August of 2024. We had our evaluation committee meeting in October. We started our negotiations in February. Our target date for actually having this in front of the commission was March, April for a decision. February, March. It's looking like we're going to be going to the board roughly about a month or so late in April. And our goal is to have the project go live with the project development environmental stage in April of 2025. I'm just going to take a pause here to remind you of the Broward Commuter Rail South project. So we've talked about that quite a bit, but that project is also just beyond that phase of this process. So we have our NEPA clearance with Broward Commuter Rail South. This will help us get to that NEPA clearance for this project. We're going to follow the National Environmental Policy Act because we are extremely hopeful that we will get a considerable contribution from the federal government on this contract. All of the Primo projects have a financial model that assumes that 25% are locally funded, 25% from the state, and then another 50% from the federal government. And then as part of this contract, what will happen is we will perform our alternative analysis. We'll finalize our locally preferred alternative, which the board will vote on. We will get our NEPA compliance completed, do our travel demand forecasting, get our preliminary engineering done, get good cost estimates. I mean, the number that I talked to you about here is a planning estimate. These numbers will become more refined as we go through the various iterations of design. And then we are going to start our grant application process, which we will be going through new starts because it's more than $300 million. And that'll be discretionary funds from the Federal Transit Administration. I will tell you that just this week, for the first for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Gia Bien, who is the project manager on Commuter Rail and also has this project under her belt, was in a meeting with the Federal Transit Administration doing our risk assessment for the Commuter Rail South project. And that is a major phase in the progression of the project and getting you closer to approval for funding. And we wrapped it up yesterday. and we were told that, you know, a lot of our information was in order and that we're looking pretty good. Of course, that's what they say. We have to wait for the final report, but we're very encouraged by that feedback and hopeful, of course, that we end up very successful with our application. Yay, Gia. Okay. And then for the NEPA class of action on this project, giving the scope of it, we are looking at either an environmental assessment or a environmental impact statement, which is the biggest one and takes quite a bit of time to complete. It is fortunately all on county-owned property, but that doesn't matter because we're using federal funds. We still have to follow this process. Okay, now some more details on the scope of services here. We're including our guideway. It contemplates that we'll have 3 stations. There's been some talk about perhaps a 4th station. We're not sure that that's real from given the spacing that we have and if that makes sense in that tight space. So, but it has been a proposal that's been floating around out there. This process will make sure that we either consider it and it's in or it's not. And then it also includes the identification of the type of rolling stock. We're talking about light rail. It's not a bus, obviously. So it's a different type of vehicle that we would be providing, identifying the location and the needs for our maintenance facility. And then depending on, if any, which we at this point don't believe there will be much, the only place where we will likely have to do any right-of-way acquisition is to support the maintenance facility. Okay, so that is it for me. I appreciate your time, and thank you for all you do for us, and I'm happy to open this up for questions.
Questions? I have a... No, you go.
The maintenance facility, it has to be located along the first leg?
It should be close to the first leg, yes.
Okay. So you're going to kind of go off the track.
We have
go
to.
Into like a warehouse
Mm-hmm.
that they go into. So you have to find a piece of dirt, basically.
And we've looked at a couple properties that are kind of in that vicinity that could be a fit. This process will help us identify whether or not they're a fit. I mean, we're just doing an aerial look at property where they'll go in and do a deeper dive and see if it'll work. What we do need, Mr. Hopper, is to have...
you got it right the first time.
I'm sorry. We do need space for a facility to do our maintenance in and to do our inspections.
Right.
And then we need storage tracks for the storage of the rails cars.
Thank you.
Raymond?
Hey, Corey.
Hi.
I've got quite a few questions. Hopefully it's all right. Here we go.
Oh, you don't have one?
Okay, number one, do we know, as of now, it would be an elevated guide track, but the photos are of a streetcar? Or like a
because
running?
Yeah, no, so very good. You caught that. So yes, it will be on the elevated guideway for this portion of it. If you remember the Primo map that I showed earlier, it goes into downtown Fort Lauderdale, then it goes west eventually out to Sawgrass Mills Mall. When it gets into those areas, it's likely going to be at grade versus elevated.
When are we going to be deciding that? Because from whatever limited research I've done, it seems like keeping everything elevated, although is a harder design choice and comes with various drawbacks, it just proves to be a more successful system. I used to live in Dallas, and the Dallas DART, which is the train tracks, when it hits downtown, all the tracks go to street level. Otherwise, they're elevated. The DART's biggest problem in 2025, the ridership is not that great, but the biggest thing is that they can't increase the frequency ever without possibly, they're talking about building a subway or something, but then DART doesn't have the money because it creates a huge bottleneck in the downtown area.
Yeah. No, it's a very valid point that you're making. So anytime in any transit project, if you can separate your activity from the rest of the world, it runs more efficiently. It's just, whether it's elevated, whether it's a tunnel, whatever it is, if it's separate from other traffic, pedestrians, everything else, it runs better. Now, here's our reality. Those costs, right? So so if we're going after federal funds in particular, we have what's called a cost effectiveness that we need to stay within to get that funding. And so sometimes, and that's why there's an alternative analysis for us to do some evaluation and to see what the cost effectiveness ratio will be. Would it be, if it were up to me, Corey, the transit professional for like 2 million years, I would say run an elevated structure all the way down, but that is probably not practical and it's very expensive.
More expensive than putting it on the ground?
Oh yeah.
So, but this is where the problem with on the ground exists to me, is it's just redundant, because you can just run a bus on the ground. And so I lived in Dallas and they had a streetcar that DART also ran on McKinney Street on the ground. And the guy had a tow truck basically follow him around 24/7 because everybody would park or stop on the guyway or there would be an accident. And the only way the on-the-ground service ever moved is once a car was towed. So even though it might be more cost-benefit in some perspective, it actually, in hindsight, is a horrible investment because you're just paying a lot for a really slow bus that's in traffic.
Well, there's definitely some arguments against and for whether you go in the rail direction or you go in the bus rapid transit direction. So there's that. Now the rail, I think probably your research shows you can carry more people, and so sometimes the investment in rail makes sense just because the throughput is more. Whether the throughput is efficient or not is another story. Then when you look at the fuel costs and the ability to move it, it's a little cheaper on the light rail side. So throughput, you're just looking at ridership only. Now, where you're absolutely right with your assessment and your analysis is that I don't know what DART did, right? But street cars do exist in other cities around the country, and there are ways to keep the traffic out of it, right? So there are, just like with the bike lanes, you can put up barriers to keep the cars out of there. You can make it a significant fine to be parked there. And you can also have law enforcement enforce that fine and make sure those vehicles aren't there. It's a learned behavior in some cases. You have to teach people you cannot drive in this lane. You cannot operate a vehicle in this lane. Just like you cannot go through, supposedly, you're not supposed to go around a gate at a rail tracks, right? You know not to do that. We all know not to do that. People do it, but you know that's a very dangerous thing to do. So that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. So there has to be, on top of all of this, some level of an educational campaign and policy to keep those lanes clear.
Yeah, so in that sense, because we just can't figure out how to not have people crash in the bright line, I think it has to be elevated. Because when it's going up Andrews or 3rd Ave and it's taking a left to go onto Broward Boulevard eventually, I mean, that's just setting a streetcar up for a T-bone. And it's just, I just can't imagine people that already wait for the bridges and are frustrated with commuter rails having the patience to wait for a running streetcar. I think politically it'll be actually have a more political weight if we put it on the ground instead of elevate it, because we might have to cannibalize some car space. And I'm a big proponent of removing car space. But in this case, I remember reading through the Primo notes, the county commissioners did note that they wouldn't like to see any effect on the current car infrastructure in the lanes. So I think we just have to look down to Miami and see what they did with the Metro Rail and see the success that it's had. It's carrying, 60,000 riders a day. The county is printing money now with the rapid transit zones around it. The ridership is swelling every day. And then another recently completed project is our neighbors to the north in Canada. The REM Montreal built 42 miles of light rail, all elevated, and they did it with precast concrete, so just printing. I mean, These are techniques you probably know. But
you're preaching to the choir on this one.
You
really are.
I think it's going to be this fork in the road of on the ground or high is going to be very important to what this project actually becomes.
Yep, you're
and
right.
I want to make sure the surtax, we're aware of all the options, and the money being released is super important.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I will say this one little piece of the engineer in me is very much tracking with what you're saying. The business person in me is saying, okay, we're trying to build out 200 miles of premium service throughout the county. There's a finite amount of money for that, and just for the elevated for 3.45 miles for the light rail project between the airport, Seaport, and Convention Center, we already know is north of $1 billion. So if we start going further west, but I'm just saying that we just have to figure out how to fund it. So if that is a policy decision that makes sense for us and it's something that we should do, we just need to figure out how to fund it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I have two other things. Sorry, I don't want to take much
okay.
time, but I know this is a very important subject because there's going to be so much money involved with this. The design, build, operate, maintain, that's not what Miami does, correct?
No, Miami, I don't believe they do. I think that they have their staff. They staffed up and did it. Yeah, I don't know. And when that was built, if that was the 80s, yeah, that was not an alternative. The alternative delivery models weren't as prevalent in those days as they are now.
I see the benefit of it. I can see it gets you rolling pretty quick, and it obviously comes with a price tag because if there's a private operator, they're going to take a margin. I think, and I'm not trying to give you business advice, but I think it would make sense that your own staff gets bolstered and you continually hire people in these fields. And Broward County kind of does like the China model, where you hire someone to originally bring their IP in, but eventually Broward County can learn the IP, and we can start building our own systems and then make sure this contract is of a limited scope, that when we do reach Shawgrass Mills Mall, which I think we will reach, it's being done all in-house, so we can continually get maximum bang for our buck. So I guess when that contract comes up, I guess that's going to be a super important contract with the length of terms.
And so there are models, there are integrated models. So there's times where you can have there's the spectrum of what a design, build, operate, maintain contract can look like. On one hand, you say 100% you do everything. Then there's gradations of the owner will do X, but the provider will do Y. And then there's, we'll teach you how to do this, and at some point in time, the intent is to turn it over to the owner to operate. So there's that full spectrum, and we'll look at all of it.
Okay. Another question, and this one's kind of hard, and it's kind of the reality, though. Do we really think federal funding, we're going to get it for phase one? I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but with the ridership and the current climate, the federal government, so as long as we're building alternative pathways so we can stay relatively on schedule. And I'll knock on wood, but... Well,
no, you're not the only one asking this question. Like, I think it's top of mind for everybody, right? Yeah. Like, what is happening in the federal government right now? What I can tell you is what our regulators told us is until we hear something concrete, please continue to operate as we are. And so, as you know, we had our risk assessment this 3 days this week. They came in from DC. They were here. They participated. They're very professional, doing their jobs like they normally would do. So all I can say is at this point, we're proceeding until we hear otherwise, that these programs are still a go. Okay. And then if we hear something different, we'll adjust. I will tell you also that we are looking at alternatives just in case. So, you know, Kevin mentioned and the what ifs. We are looking at some of that stuff to see what we would do in the event that, you know, those funds are not available. But we are still continuing the momentum. We're not going to stop. We're going to keep it going. And at a minimum, you know, if we have shovel-ready projects and, you know, funds open up and they become available, we're ready to go.
Okay.
Corey, Mr. Phil Allen is calling in, correct?
Can I go ahead now?
Can
you hear me?
Circle back.
Yes, sir. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, I'm out here in the clouds someplace. Did the solicitation for your outside consultant, was that fixed requirement that it be an elevated rail? And whether the alternative to an elevated busway, was that considered or not?
I'm gonna have Gia come up and help me with that, but come on, Gia.
For the first 3.5 miles, the Airport Seaport Convention Center project, we are advertising as an elevated / at grade. I think certain section, when it's on county-owned right-of-way, it could potentially be at grade, and then when you're going over structures, it has to be elevated. So it's advertised as both.
But did it consider a busway instead of a rail?
We are going to go through alternative analysis before we can come up with a recommended alternative. So that is a NEPA requirement.
Okay. And the other question is, one connection of that is 17th Street, which is there. They're doing some interchange and stuff like that. But the other end of that project is the Intermodal Center. So it would seem to me that this doesn't make sense from a standpoint of if the Intermodal Center is not ready to prepare to handle that end of the project, don't they have to go together?
So the plan is, and very similar, and it's a very good question. What we've been doing with our projects, and I don't know if Mark's not in the room, is, and this is done in a lot of projects where you have a carve out for the eventual development of something else that connects to it, so that you don't put something in the way that would preclude you from being able to integrate all of these items together. And so that's what we're doing here. We're building out and designing out as if they were all integrated, and however, they can still be standalone projects.
Well, I guess I would go back to the California high-speed rail project where 10 years ago they put in the overpasses around the facility, but the reality is the rail part of it never got completed because of no funding and no alternative source of funding.
Well,
go ahead.
California, I will say this about the California high-speed line. That project is a very interesting one on so many levels. California made some very interesting choices that probably others in other parts of the country would not have made. They decided to build from the inner and go outward. Most times you build from one terminus point and go in. They chose a different model. They never were fully funded to start with, and their finance plan, as far as I know, was never. Well, I don't want to say that. Let me pull back on that. But there's a lot of different decisions that were made there that we're not making here. I'll say it that way.
But yet you're not recognizing the absolute requirement that the Intermodal Center be open and running in order to support that end of the project. Is that right?
We can do both. We can get people to the light rail project
from the airport.
From the airport, yes, sir. From the terminals.
Okay. But that's going to be a different technology as it relates to the people mover within the airport.
The people mover will be within the bounds of the airport. The light rail project will connect the airport, Seaport Convention Center, and then go west, north and west.
Okay, I'm trying to picture that right now. Okay, fine. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Raymond, you wanted to finish something?
Yeah, a few more things. Would it be within the scope to ask you about the BRT status on Oakland Park Boulevard?
Yeah.
Because this is LRT related. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
It's okay.
I just wanted to kind of know the status of it, see what's going on. The Better Streets Broward group, we went to almost every city meeting, and we endorsed our support for allowing them to support the project. So just so you know, on the grassroots advocacy side, quite a few people went to quite a few meetings.
I know, and we definitely appreciate seeing you there and having that support. It's definitely made a difference in the project, but I'm going to let Gia explain to you where we are because there are some nuances she needs to talk through.
Thank you. So for the Oakland Park Boulevard BRT project, we did run into some state-level policy changes, which resulted in some delay in the delivery of the project. So the state came up with this lane repurposing requirements last year, and as we stand today, they're still coming out with new updates regarding this lane repurposing policy change. And in order to still move forward as fast as we can, we're coming up with a phased approach for this project. And for the portion that does have to meet this lane repurposing requirement, we're going to make it a phase 2, which is east of Turnpike. And then for the portion that is not affected by the lane repurposing requirement, we're going to make it phase 1. And we're going to proceed as fast as we can with the environmental documents that's required as part of the state's requirements. And then hopefully this can be delivered as close as what we originally committed. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess talking to the state is beyond our scope as a county board. I'm just thinking maybe like how can we get FDOT to be more clear with the lane repurposing, but that's probably not within our scope.
So this all arises out of a law that was passed last year, House Bill 1301, which added a series of additional steps before any local government can engage in certain lane repurposing for public transit purposes or for multimodal purposes. Again, FDOT is in the midst of, and I think that they just within the last week or two came out with another series of guidance documents regarding the implementation of this. They were in the same boat as every local government because there's FDOT is subject to many of the same requirements as the local governments are with regards to their own projects on state roads as well. So there's really no way for anybody to ask FDOT to, kind of nail them down to what are those requirements going to be until they're done with their regulation process in regards to this. But I know that there's ongoing communications both at the staff level as well as at the legal level between the various offices. We speak with FDOT Region 4 on a regular basis regarding these. In fact, I have a call in right now relating to this particular issue, not with the Oakland Park BRT, but some more generalized items in their most recent guidance documents.
Okay,
So,
that's good to know.
everybody's talking with everybody, and FDOT is in the same boat as we are. We'd all love to have exact guidance as to what needs to be done for how these different projects can proceed forward. There's additional traffic analyses, there are potential supermajority votes by local government boards, things of that nature that now have to be part of the process that didn't before.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that on the BRT. In the last portion is the COA. Can you add some transparency to that? I'm kind of confused about the COA and the scope of work that it's regarding. I know it seems like there's quite a bit of things that the COA can unlock. The comprehensive operational analysis. I just don't know much about it. I don't know if it was a Surtax funded thing. If it was, I would like to know more about it, know when it's going to hit the public domain for public comment because I would like to make sure that while we have all this money, that our bus riders who are riding the bus every day are seeing continuous improvement every single day, and that we as a Surtax board are delivering value to those bus riders and those transit riders, and whether that be mobile electronic payment or enhancing other things. But yeah, if you can speak on the COA a little bit.
Sure. And just for awareness, a lot of our some of the people that use our system are cash riders. Revenue for us, yeah. It's a big deal. But mobile payment and electronic payment is part of a separate project than the COA. That the comprehensive operational analysis is our attempt at reconciling in the last, I guess, I would say the last 10 years, the change in where people live, work, and want to go. And so we're looking at the entire county and reimagining what our bus service would look like and all the other supporting services would be, including microtransit, last mile, first mile stuff, plus fixed route, plus TOPS, plus the Primo plan. Primo plan is the basis, and then everything else is supporting that. We have not gone out for public comment yet. We have gone out to various stakeholders and had input, but we have not taken it to our board yet for their understanding and knowledge. And when it's completed and at that point where we can take it there, we'll take it to them first, and then we'll be going out to the public for more public engagement and involvement. The COA, we were supposed to do it back in 2019, I believe it was. And we were starting it, and then the pandemic hit, and then we kind of put it on pause because we're not going to get any good data on what the travel patterns were during that time. So we're late with getting this done just because of the pandemic. But it is underway, as you know, and we can come to the Surtax board at the appropriate time and bring more information on it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And do you have a time that it'll be finished?
We are expecting it to be done probably the summer or fall of this year.
Okay. And this is my last comment. Are you familiar with the transit app called the Transit? It's just called Transit. One of my friends works for Tri-Rail, and he was recently able to work with that company, and they run an app from the iOS store called Transit, and he was able to put the live tracking of the trains on the Transit app. And I know we have GPS capability in our buses. Would it be possible that your guys' organization works with the Transit app using the Surtax operating funds? Because the app is far superior to the BCT app, which is just
basic.
Basic. And there's a really good app that is really intuitive, and I think linking that is a good way to digitally enrich our transit ecosystem.
Yeah, we have been looking at a way to integrate in with other apps so that we have a more robust offering rather than trying to invent it ourselves and start from scratch. So that process is underway as well. I will also tell you that we're working with Tri-Rail, all four of us, PalmTran, Miami, and BCT are working on an interoperability app that brings all of us together under one umbrella with all of our information. And I believe that app is going to be a lot more intuitive and similar, maybe not as great as Transit app, because I'm a big fan, I'll own it, but definitely an upgrade from where we are now.
Timeline on that too?
I'm sorry?
A timeline on maybe the interoperability app?
My understanding, may need to get back to you on that, but my understanding was that should be available the summer of this year. They're in the testing phase now.
Okay.
But don't hold me on that one, please. I'm
not. I know these are just rough timelines. I'm just asking for timelines so that I can put in my own notes to follow back at the appropriate time.
Okay.
In the transit app, would that be something that you guys would be able to pursue too?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's assuming we can get all the funding we need to do it.
He told me that the app didn't charge Tri-Rail to populate the tracking data, and I didn't really understand how the contract works. But yeah.
Well, and you know what? Now you're talking way beyond my pay grade because I have no idea about this whole thing. I didn't even know. Did you know anybody that you can share?
The transit app.
Yeah.
The live tracking is on it?
Yeah.
The routing
live
is on it.
tracking's on there.
Okay.
Angelica, would you do us a favor? Would you come to the mic?
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Good afternoon, Angelica Love. I'm the Deputy General Manager of Transit. So as you're asking the questions in regards to Transit app, our live information currently is our route structure and how you can take your bus to locations from your start to your destination. If you're asking for it to follow your bus, that information isn't completely there yet. But because we have so many apps that we're working on, including the one for the interoperable app, we will try to merge all of that information. So all of those systems will be able to, and our customers and our riders will be able to have that information depending on the app they choose to use. But preferably, the app that has all of our region on would be the best app that we should use, that we could connect globally for these Tri-County area.
So you could try to get it on the transit app?
Absolutely, we can.
I'm just saying this so the Surtax board knows, when you ride a bus with 30-minute headways.
She's in charge of our IT department, so.
Yeah, I was just going to, for the Surtax board and everyone knows, when you ride a bus with 30-minute headways and you have real-time tracking, it's much more convenient to walk to your bus stop just in time and catch the bus. And it's a huge quality of life service for slower service routes.
Yeah.
So,
no, we do have that feature. Yes. So
but
the
arrival time, but it helps to see it with the little monitor and you track it on the map. It's just something about mentally makes it easier while you're waiting.
We're not Uber yet.
No, but Miami-Dade trolley system does it in Tri-Rail. So that's why I just want to make sure that we're doing those continuous improvements for our riders who are riding like right this minute. I appreciate it. And those are my questions. Thank you.
Corey, I have one last comment.
Thank you for your questions.
Can I assume, based on the low stress mobility network master plan, that all the Primo and these mass transit mechanisms will have bike access so that we can make this connection everywhere we want?
That is our intent. We are bike friendly now. You can bring your bike on a bus. We have a place to put it. We even on our express buses that go from here
Primo will
to
have
Miami,
that.
we have bike, bike.
And our
space
light
as
rail
well.
also will have it, right?
Yeah, our
Okay.
intent
All
is
right.
to fully integrate all the modes.
Fine. Thank you. Anybody else? Before we move to the Port Bypass Road. What?
Take a break.
A break? You had a break.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm older than you. I don't need
The thank you so much. Members, I just wanted to let you know that the next presentation is very short. It's just a video. And then if you'd like, we do have food. The lunch is here. Okay?
Okay, my name is Richard Tornies. I'm the Director of Highway Construction Engineering Division for Broward County. I'm here to report on the progress of the Port Bypass Road. What you're going to see coming up is a short video. Actually, it's what it's done by a drone, and you're going to see what we've done. It's about 2 weeks old or so. What you won't see is all the underground work. So we put in over like 100 auger cast piles, a lot of them about 100 feet in depth. We've done the drainage, water main improvements. So a lot of the underground, I would say the majority of it is done. And that's always the most complicated part of building anything, is because you don't know what's there, and there was a lot there. Luckily, we've been very good about keeping everything whole, so there was no big issues. So the project started in May of 2024. We're going to be completed with the bypass road part of it. There's two parts of the project. The bypass road, to open it up, right now we're on track for October of this year, of 2025. And we're on schedule. And the contractor has an incentive bonus to actually do that. So he's really pushing. He's pushing. Yeah. So it's always important that the contractor cooperates, and they've been very cooperative. And then we have the other part with the remainder part of the project. It'll be complete in the basically early 2026. It'll be complete somewhere in there. You're going to see the video too. It's going to show you some of columns coming out of the ground with piers, with pier caps on there. We're getting ready in a couple of weeks. We're going to be setting beams. Probably by another 2 weeks too, all the piers, pretty much, most of them will be in place. So I'm going to let it run. You can see it's actually just a narrative. Our CI, one of our CI representatives out there, actually narrated some of it. So hopefully you can understand exactly what he's talking about, which is easy because he explained it very well. But if not, I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I might, I just wanted to say that one of your own staff members did this production. So I just wanted to do a shout out to Katia Bordy and to Shauna Wilson.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Gonzalez. I'm one of the project administrators for the Bypass Road. This project is located at Port Everglades. The beauty of this project is that's going to help with mobility. Right now, people have to stop at the checkpoint, and they have a little bit of hard time going into the Broward Convention Center or 17th Street. What this project is going to do is going to allow people or traffic to have direct movement from the road to Eisenhower Boulevard and to the new hotel Omni. As you can see right now, we are in full phase 2 construction, which implies the construction of all the columns, the pier caps, and the construction of the bypass road. The bypass road basically consists of a bridge, which is an overpass, taking us all the way to Eisenhower Boulevard. On the north side of the bridge, we have the service road, which is on the construction right now too. On the next phase, we're going to be working right there at the median. On those medians are going to be reworked to give access to traffic to go into the gas farms. All the truckers that come here, they go and get gas on these gas farms, and it's important for them to give them access, easy access and mobility to go inside the farms and to exit the farms. That will consist of a runabout where they can go ahead, go inside the farms, come out, take the runabout, and exit again on Spangler Boulevard to State Road 84. The bypass road has to be completed first. That has to be completed by October 2025. The next phase, which is the final completion date of the project, that's on February 2026. And that will be completing all the project. And we have lighting, we're going to have ITS cameras, CCTV cameras. We will have landscaping too. It's going to be a brand new landscaping, video irrigation system, and provide lighting. Thank you to all the stakeholders for helping us to construct this project. Thank you to the county, thank you to Port Facilities, and thank you to all the users of the port, because they are helping us to help them as a bottom line.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a comment.
Yes.
As a citizen of Fort Lauderdale, and if I were a commissioner, I would be thanking the county because this is huge. 17th Street is one of the busiest streets in probably the county, but certainly Fort Lauderdale. So when cities are asking for municipal help, City of Fort Lauderdale is getting one indirectly through this project. Furthermore, this is going to make the port traffic better. It's going to help 17th Street, the merchants, the neighbors that live around that area. It's also the county's investment on that hotel, that convention hotel and the convention center. We haven't had a convention center since COVID, okay? And the hotels have been killing it. The area's been killing it. Wait till we have a convention center and the incredible economic impact that thing's going to have, because we're going to have the nicest convention center in the country. So all of those things playing together, it shows connectivity, it shows amenity, it shows care for the neighbors and the streets. This is one of those projects where we can really like toot our own horn and say that the Surtax, and then the speed in which you guys are working to meet, and I know it has to do with the hotel and the convention center,
right,
but it doesn't matter. That's the way things should be done.
Yes.
So great job on this, and I'm super excited about the whole project.
Thank you very much.
Ditto, Alan, and more Surtax dollars are going to be coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your mic is off, Mr. Chair. Your mic is off.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said, before we get into the discussion item on the Third Amendment, do we want to take a break? Alan, are you okay?
Are we ever going to eat?
No. Oh, I didn't think we were having lunch today.
Dude, I eat at 12, okay? Okay,
I thought we were going to finish before lunch. Taking a lunch break. It's not on the agenda, but we're taking one. I've been overruled now that the quorum is back. Plus, Mr. Phil Allen, are you still there?
I'm here.
You're still having lunch.
Hello, I'm here.
All right. I'm going to
Thank you,
recall
Phil.
the meeting to order. And we're in for a discussion item about the Third Amendment to the Surtax agreements between all the cities, correct, Nathaniel?
Yes, so I'm happy to speak about this, Gretchen. I don't know if you want me to. So, all right. We are in what I would like to think is, and wherever there's wood, everybody please knock on it. The final stage is the finalization of the Third Amendment and restatement to the Surtax interlocal agreement with the cities. In fact, yesterday we had a workshop with the entirety of the BCCMA going through the county administrator's proposal and term sheet to the cities to see whether there were any further questions, get comments and feedback. There were a couple of last items that we need the city to provide back to us in terms of some things, deadlines and time periods for things that the county doesn't particularly have a feeling one way or the other about, that we really want the cities to be able to tell us. And there was a pretty robust discussion and I think very positive feedback from the cities that we had gotten when the term sheet went out some weeks ago to the cities, a response back from them with a lot of, in response to the different sections, the BCCMAs and conceptual agreement and conceptual agreement, conceptual agreement. So I consider that to be very positive. And I'll give a brief overview of what the term sheet looks like. And the key changes to how this impacts the program as a whole and streamlines the process, provides the cities with more consistent streams of funding for the kinds of projects that they want, and provide a meaningful positive impact on residents, which is, again, the key element of the program. So without going through the entirety of everything, the objectives were to streamline and simplify and broaden access to the Surtax for the cities. There is a component to it which becomes on an annual basis of formula-based allocations for rehabilitation and maintenance projects. Rehab and maintenance projects have always been, I believe the legal term is the redheaded stepchild of the Second Amendment. That it was only after MCPs were fully funded, only after community shuttle was funded, only after, if there was more, then there would be consideration of certain R&M projects. R&M projects for the cities, and again, I have to say that the collaboration that has occurred between the cities and county administration in going back and forth on many of these things has been what's been able to move, you need me to move this closer, been able to really move the needle on this. And one thing that the county has heard from the cities is that those R&M projects, because there are a limited number of cities that have significant enough roads to create road and roadway expansion projects. And one of the things that, at least as somebody that's coming in relatively recently to this process, one thing that I saw that I think that there was concurrence on is that the cities, to some extent, or at least some cities, would feel that they have to submit an application every year because if they don't submit an application every year, there wasn't going to be any actual funding that could be going to them because there wouldn't be R&M projects that would happen. So rather than having the cities come up with applications just for the sake of submitting 3 applications for MCPs every year, the concept of formula-based funding for rehabilitation and maintenance was a key component to this. So that every city would receive some money from the surtax every year to do those, again, bread and butter things like fixing roads, fixing sidewalks, all things which are eligible road improvements under the surtax statute, and that also don't require the level of sophistication that a roadway project has. All of the cities always need to be able to be doing fixing potholes and fixing sidewalks and making sure that their intersections and their crossings are appropriately painted and striped. All of these kinds of things that fit into R&M projects. So again, there's a significant portion of this which is focused on making sure that there is an annual stream of funding. And I will be happy to take questions throughout the entirety of what I'm talking about. So feel free to ask whenever.
Well, is that money that they're getting part of the minimum 10%, or is it over and above?
All of this is within the minimum annual guarantee. We basically looked creatively to find ways to do more with the minimum annual guarantee in meaningful ways for the cities. And they've been a collaborative partner. The discussions with the BCCMA Surtax committee as well as the BCCMA as a whole. And again, credit to Gretchen's staff and to county administration for the creativity in looking at those things that the cities had asked for, figuring out how it works within the county's ability to provide funding, and then my job becomes easy because it's just writing it.
Alan?
Is this something that Doug is going to have to sign?
Nope.
No, it's just an agreement between the county and the...
Just like the interlocal agreements, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, and the underlying interlocal agreement, it is an agreement between the Board of County Commissioners and then the requisite number of cities that are required to amend the initial interlocal agreement.
Is there going to be any changes to the surtax boards, anything that has to do with our ability or what we're doing now or how we're doing it? Any of that kind of stuff.
We've mandated weekly meetings.
Well, Doug would like to have those just individual with him being the one there.
Yes, there are certain changes, but they are both. We looked at what the concept of oversight is, both under the current code as well as what other oversight boards provide. There is both expansion to your role that also doesn't require, frankly, one of the things that we were very cognizant of is this is a volunteer board. It is not a full-time job, and while we wanted to expand your involvement with and discussion of certain key aspects of the municipal program, we wanted to do it in a way that was respectful of your time and didn't add to the commitment that you already have given to the oversight board. So there are certain elements, and I'll talk about those as we go through.
Can I get a copy of the changes that are being made?
We'd be happy to provide you with a copy of the presentation. It's a public record from yesterday's workshop. And any of the other documentations. We're still drafting the big
fine.
doc.
I just like to read
Of
it
course.
so I understand it.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was not intended to be the alpha and the omega of discussion regarding the Third Amendment.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So-
our request historically was to be abreast of it so we know what it says, okay?
No, I understand. I just
one thing. The groups that you're working with, you use the acronyms. I think it would be good for all of us to get a refresher
The
on
Broward County City Managers Association.
Okay, and that is?
It is the representatives from the city managers'
All
offices
cities.
of every city in Broward
So that's who you've been working closely with?
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the things that was a key ask from a number of cities, which is expressly provided for in the surtax statute and has not been something that we have had before, is microtransit. So we have a number of cities that have requested the ability to use surtax funding for microtransit programs. And that becomes part of that annual allocation funding. They can use it for both roadway R&M, road R&M projects, as well as for microtransit. We provide them with flexibility in order to determine what is the best need for their cities. And again, the cities using these portions of the dollars for those everyday activities is something that they know better than that the county knows. They know what their individual needs of their individual residents. And the fact is that what is important for Sea Ranch Lakes is not necessarily going to have the same importance to Coral Springs or Southwest Ranches or Pembroke Pines. So a one-size-fits-all approach imposed upon them doesn't provide them with the most beneficial use of the funds for their specific needs, especially on the R&M and microtransit front. So again, the goal is to provide flexibility. As you've heard throughout your time on the Oversight Board, one of the key goals of the Surtax, and Gretchen has said the word leverage so many times that if one were to establish the leverage drinking game at every Oversight Board meeting, we'd all be dead. So leverage is a key component to the proposed Third Amendment. And what that does is it changes the MCP process, the Municipal Capital Programs project that we have, or program that we have now, where the cities all submit their 3 applications. It goes to the MPO for evaluation and ranking. There's a set amount of money, and maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 projects in any given year will get funding. We've changed that to a grant match program, where there will be funding that's available in a grant match pot, in essence, from the surtax dollars, from that minimum annual guarantee, which may change depending on the year based on revenues that come in, how much money is going out in formula-based funding, things of that nature, but becomes available to assist cities specifically with them paying the local match to state and federal appropriations, grants, and things of that nature. So really focusing on the leverage component for those roadway projects.
Clarification. So they're able to take surtax dollars and they're going to use that as the match. So it's coming out of their 10%.
This is all coming out of, and again, it comes out of the portion of the surtax money every year that's allocated for municipalities.
They apply for the match.
So they, in essence, are going through 2 application processes. One of them is coming to MAP administration saying, we are looking at this particular grant program, state or federal, or seeking this appropriation, and it's going to require a 25% match or a 20% match. One of the ways that many of these grant programs work is you get more points if you're overmatching the local portion. So we have the ability to help them both provide a significant portion of the local match. The cities do have skin in the game. There was a comment from at least one of the county commissioners when we were discussing these concepts at a workshop back last August, I believe, where the cities needed to have some skin in the game in these projects. So the grant match program provides them with can provide them with a significant portion of the local match, whether it's just the minimum local match and then they apply for the program, the state or federal program, or potentially providing them with overmatch money.
So prior, they really didn't have that tool in their tool chest, right?
It was limited because potentially their capital, their MCP that they were applying for was in conjunction with some state or federal potential, funding that may have come in. But that's once a year, and you don't necessarily know what happens if in the middle of the year, after the window to apply for a capital program funding has closed for that fiscal year, they suddenly find out. Sure, Gretchen, go ahead.
If I could also, the capital program was always building the new 5th year of a 5-year plan. Right. So the money that the cities were applying for from the capital program was coming 5 years later. And what you all had been saying and what the cities were saying is we need access to money now to go after money today, not 5 years from now. So that's what this does.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, okay, so now they have to match.
Some portion.
And before, because I remember some of the cities were just asking for money and say, we want to go build sidewalks and curbs and gutters and give us money, right?
Yes.
Or I need to fix a bridge, give us money.
Well, fix a bridge fits into the R&M component, which there was, I think, only 1 or 2 years.
Okay,
where
I don't
R&M
want to
money
get
was
lost
ever
on that.
available.
Okay, so now they're required to bring in money, to put up some money, and it's part of and then they have to seek out some additional money, correct?
That the grant match pot and that particular aspect.
So that's a new rule.
That's a new concept that has not existed under the Surtax program to this point.
I'm not saying I'm against it. I want to understand it. And have the cities indicated that they're good with that deal?
I believe that was one of the items that they put a big conceptually agree in their response to the term sheet.
And who signs for the city? Do they have the MPO sign for it?
No, each city has to bring the Third Amendment to their respective city commissions. There's a requisite percentage of the cities and population that have to approve an amendment in order for the amendment to the ILA.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So continue on. That grant match program, and by the way, there are going to be certain cities that may not have the financial wherewithal for whatever the reason to come to the table with funding. They're going to have the ability to have communications with and make requests to the county to waive that requirement because of specific, and without getting way into the granular details, specific criteria that for cities that just don't have the ability to bring dollars to the local portion of the match to be able to seek that.
I'm confused because I thought you're saying they have to take their money.
Some portion.
I thought they were taking their Surtax allocation as their money.
This is a completely separate pot of money. This is a grant match pot, separate and apart from the formula-based funding they get every year.
Pot.
Yeah.
So they have to come up with money out of their general fund.
That's what again, the couple of county commissioners specifically commented about the cities having skin in the game. So we've provided for there to be a minimum portion that comes from the city when they're asking for money from the grant match pot. We've also provided a mechanism for them to seek a waiver of that requirement to bring some money based on a specific set of circumstances.
Chair?
Because this is a discussion, just push your button and start talking, okay?
Thank you. How was the formula determined?
So there's 2 aspects of the formula. The BCCMA, and I'm going to use that as the acronym going forward, originally had asked for and they had voted for using centerline miles within the city as the basis for formula. There was also a request that the county come up with a potential modified formula-based system that takes into consideration things like, I believe is median household income in each particular city and how much money they've already gotten from the surtax over a rolling 5-year period. So the one for when we do circulate the PowerPoint for you to take a look at, you'll see that the example formula is based on the modified version of the formula includes how much money they've received from fiscal year 20 to 24. And again, that would roll each year when the formula distribution is determined. We've also talked about some other things in terms of how the formula works. That's basically the best way that I can use to describe that. Those are things that had been asked to be considered. There's also the fact that one other component to this that also relates back to the formula-based funding in great detail, which is there are some cities that are so small that they are never going to have things like, and by the way, community shuttle remains part of the city side of the ledger, and that's been discussed with the BCCMA. There are some cities that are so small they're never going to have a community shuttle. There are some cities that are so small that they were never going to ever get a municipal capital program project approved under the existing system and are never going to be getting a state or federal grant to go expand a roadway. They just don't have it. So we've also included a mechanism for them to say that, look, we are going to forego potentially having community shuttle money or applying for state or federal grants so that they can get an enhancement to their annual money. Because realistically speaking, go find a city that has less than 1% of the centerline miles, and what kind of state or federal grant are they going to be getting to expand a road? They don't have bridges to get federal or state money to do. But what they do need on an annual basis is money to maintain and improve the living experience for their residents on their roads through making sure that their sidewalks and their roadways and their intersections are in good and safe condition. So those kinds of things. So if they want to opt out of getting other or being available for other kinds of funds, they get additional money in the formula base. So again, we tried to find ways, again, working with the BCCMA, with the creativity of Gretchen and her team in county administration, trying to find ways to maximize in a fair manner for these cities that, again, each are in very different circumstances. How is it that they can get and utilize surtax money for the benefit of the residents for their specific municipalities, and also enhance the overall countywide transportation system, which is a key goal, because at the end of the day, there is only one countywide transportation system. A sidewalk in Parkland is just as much a part of the transportation system as a road somewhere else or a roadway somewhere else. So again, the goal being making sure that everybody obtains. One of the things that was a prohibition under the Second Amendment that we've already kind of moved away from in some ways is there's an express prohibition on functional public art as part of road improvements. And the fact is, decorative elements, if you're using, for example, wayfinding signage, plain green metal wayfinding signage lasts just as long as decorative wayfinding signage in many circumstances, and the cost is not different necessarily. So why would you prohibit it being decorative if it costs the same amount and it lasts just as long from an engineering standpoint? So we've eliminated the complete prohibition on decorative and functional art components to road improvements as being, those are now surtax eligible, or elements of those would be surtax eligible if their engineer of record certifies that it will last just as long, and also that the only portion that's coming from the surtax money is the same amount that it would have cost for the basic element.
Does that allow the city to subsidize? Let's just say it's $5 more, and they're gonna take it out of their pocket.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if a city wants to have, I'm going to use a ridiculous, maybe not necessarily a ridiculous example. There are basic street lights. You go to certain cities and there are decorative street lights. There's a cost differential between those two. Street lights are a surtax eligible, to the extent that they are a road improvement. Street lights are surtax eligible under the statute. And the surtax would pay for up to what the basic cost of the street light would be. And if the city wants to enhance that and supplement it so that they can have decorative street lights, that's their choice.
That can't come out of their 10%. It has to come out of their
General
fund.
They would not, again, the money that they get from the formula is for rehabilitation and maintenance. It wouldn't be for those other things. So right now we have in the Second Amendment a provision that allows funding, surtax funding for parking structures. So if there's a park and ride that's getting built or things of that nature. But we limit the amount of money that the city can charge for their parking to the exact operation and maintenance cost of that facility. That prohibition is being eliminated so that they have the ability to charge market rates. However, the amounts that they generate in excess of their operation and maintenance costs have to be used for transportation-related improvements. So in essence, the surtax money that helps you build your parking lot, stays in the transportation sphere from the revenue that you obtain from that parking lot.
So they would have to put that revenue into the transportation division of this.
Their public works. I mean, again, we don't want to get into the micromanagement of how they do their budgets, but there's reporting requirements that we'll have with regards to those things and protections to make sure that we're obtaining information as to the revenues that they get and that they have in fact utilized any excess money that back into, again, transportation related items, which could be more rehab and maintenance, road expansion. They could be using that for the add-on cost for the decorative elements. It has to be a surtax eligible expenditure. So again, it's keeping the money in the transportation improvement sphere while also giving them more both flexibility and responsibility for managing the assets that they have within their city. And also because, a city deciding that they're going to charge 38.5 cents per hour for parking seems a little bit odd at some point when they're trying to match it up exactly to what their O&M expenses are for that particular facility. There is, and again, this is going to wind up also being subject to an ordinance change. There's already there's a provision in county ordinance currently that prohibits a city from using R&M money that they couldn't apply for a rehab and maintenance project for a capital project that had been paid for with surtax dollars. In discussions with the cities, the modification to that and removing that prohibition is something that had been viewed positively. And also, we don't want to be in a situation as a program where a project that has been built with surtax money becomes, I don't remember who mentioned it today, becomes run down or, in disrepair. Even though they're required to maintain them, there's a minimum standard of maintenance. It's not failing level of service. And then there's maintaining. So removing that prohibition is something that's being considered. That would be subject to an ordinance change approved by the Board of County Commissioners. And again, when the Third Amendment goes to the Board of County Commissioners for their approval, they'll also know that in conjunction with that, and shortly thereafter, if it were to be approved by the Board of County Commissioners and then by the cities, they would be getting an ordinance change to address that issue. Yes,
we
sir.
realize we can't approve the Third Amendment.
No,
but hopefully we get, as Alan says, we get to see it before it goes to the county commission to see if we're happy with it. Can we do that?
You will absolutely. I'm sorry, Gretchen, go ahead.
So rather than send the presentation, which was very focused towards the cities and ongoing city discussions that the Oversight Board may not be that familiar with, we just forwarded the latest communication that came from Monica to the president of the Broward County City Managers Association. You should have just received it. I saw Roy send it through. It has the term sheet attached as an exhibit, and it also has an illustrative for the purposes of them seeing what the formula distribution could be using a centerline miles or a modified centerline miles at a $30 million. Again, it was just an example so that they could understand how they would fare. We just sent that to you so that you have the term sheet that you can take a look at.
Well, this is extremely informative, and I think maybe that'll just be something else. So by the time we do get to look at it, it's not
new. Sure.
And I appreciate the term sheet, but could I get the actual amendment if it's already been?
It has not, because again, we wanted to make sure that we have this.
I get it, but I want to see it when it is.
Yeah,
I know, but I'm looking at a term sheet, and if I were sending a term sheet to the county city managers, I would put in the terms that apply to the city managers and to the cities, but I might not put in changes that are being applied to stuff that impacts this board. So I would like to see, whenever you have it drafted, if I could see the,
It will
if all of
absolutely.
us could see the agreement, that would be great.
I personally got a commitment from the county manager that we would get to see it.
Well, and I will just let you all know that the term sheet does include the changes to your role that Nathaniel spoke to earlier. There are, you're acting in an appellate fashion. The cities have the ability to appeal decisions that are made at the county level to you all.
Certain
ones.
specific certain decisions. So one of the things that I have harped on since I got here was there are zombie cycle 1 projects that we need to bring to closure. Either they need to go under agreement or they need to go away. And one of the key elements of the Third Amendment is a specific time period. It is you have 90 days from the effective date of this Third Amendment to bring your projects under agreement. No more time. Under agreement, or they will be subject to termination. Now, there are some projects that are not under agreement intentionally by both the county and the city jointly. Certain projects that are not ready to, because there are other there are other county or state road projects that are happening in that same vicinity. So those are the intentional ones. So presumably those are not the ones that will be killed off in this process, but there are other ones that are going to be. If the city disagrees with the county decision, because it is discretionary at that point after the 90 days to terminate the project, if they disagree, they have the ability to basically provide notice of their objection to the termination, and that would come before this board, and you have the ability to provide them with another 90 days to bring their project under agreement. Otherwise, stake through the heart, it's done.
These are these old projects from years ago that were holding up money that couldn't be spent because it was committed, correct, Gretchen?
That is,
all right, fine.
Yes.
Maybe we'll, Phil, you still there? Phil, you still there?
Yes.
Glad, huh?
Yes.
All right. I'm glad to hear that. Music to your ears, right?
What's that?
I'm getting rid of these old projects from a few years ago.
I heard it.
Music to your ears.
Yes, I heard it.
Okay.
But it does raise a point of getting involved potentially in politics here. We need to be very careful about how this stuff goes through the process.
Absolutely. And again, the decision on whether or not to terminate them rests with the county. The county will have made its decision to terminate those projects. The only thing that would be coming before the board is whether or not to give the city another 90 days to go under, or the county's decision, not this board's decision to terminate, will go forward. There are certain projects that have been completed with non-surtax funds. Those are just from cycle 1. Those are done. They are immediately terminated under the Third Amendment because those projects were completed with non-surtax funds. We had no ability to monitor, maintain. They just chose to do them, even though they were approved cycle 1 projects. Those projects go away. There's no right to come before the board to ask for more time. It's just done. So there are other similar kinds of scenarios where the county is canceling certain things, where if the city disagrees, they have the ability to come before this oversight board and in an oversight capacity for you to make the decision whether to provide them with an additional time, one-time time.
Well, is that an absolute, or does it become a recommendation to the county commission?
No, that is actually, this would be a delegated, when the county commission, assuming the county commission approves the Third Amendment, they would be delegating that authority, and again, approves a ordinance change that corresponds to that. That would be a delegation of authority to this board, again, not to decide whether or not to cancel a project, to whether or not the county's cancellation occurs now or in a set period of time after when it would otherwise have gone into effect.
Well, early on in the formation of this committee or this body, there was a lot of discussion from the then county attorney about litigation that occurred on the west coast of Tampa or St. Pete or something like that. That was a lawsuit that was based on appointed board authority to do those types of items.
Sure, and Mr. Allen, I could speak to that. That is the decision that relates to the Hillsborough County surtax,
Right.
which was ultimately declared illegal by the Florida Supreme Court. The issue that the Florida Supreme Court addressed in that case was that the ballot question itself took power away from the county commission and provided power, both provided specific power to an oversight board to approve or reject projects, and also in the ballot question required a certain percentage of the surtax money to be spent in certain ways every year. Now, the statute that governs the transportation surtax specifically says that the county commission decides how to spend these funds and how to divide these funds with the cities. By their approval of the Third Amendment and by the board's approval of an ordinance regarding these things, they are ultimately making the decision as to these various things. That is not something that creates a problem the same way that the Hillsborough County case did, because the Board of County Commissioners in Hillsborough County had no ability to disagree with the percentages that were as part of the ballot question, or take away or change an ordinance that modifies the role of the oversight board or the independent board that they had there. That was a pure decision-making board based on a ballot question rather than a delegation of authority from the Board of County Commissioners. Now, the Board of County Commissioners delegates authority all the time to the county administrator or others to take certain actions. It has the ability to do all of those things because it also has the ability to, at some later date, take that away. And because of that, it doesn't run afoul of the Hillsborough County decision. We evaluated that very closely in going through this to make sure that we would not run afoul of those things. In terms of the capital projects that are already in the pipeline, one of the things that we wanted to make sure of is that money that has already been spent for an earlier phase of a project doesn't result, that down the road that project is, when they're ready for construction, well, there's no money for it. That becomes, again, as with the county's goal, this board's goal, the commission's goal, the city's goal of being proper financial stewards of taxpayer money, there is a prioritization to make sure that those tails of those projects are funded either when they were ready or when they're ready or when they were currently programmed. So there's remains a priority for those projects to continue forward. And again, all of these things are doable as we sit here right now. And again, who knows, how much money the surtax brings in any future out year. But the goal is to be able to do all of these things within the existing, funding levels at the minimum annual guarantee amount. So all of these things have been vetted to make sure that those things should be able to work going forward. Microtransit, which again a number of cities have specifically asked for, is a bit of a touchy legal issue because it's the cities spending money on private contracting with third parties to move people around, and it is under their control and jurisdiction. So the cities, as part of the Third Amendment, while the county does get information regarding those contracts, receive copies of them, we're requiring the cities to make sure that Those entities have certain levels of insurance, that both the city and the county are named additional insureds under those policies, that the county is even though we're just a funding entity for this purpose, that we're fully indemnified if there were ever an issue, and that the cities are responsible for ensuring that their microtransit providers comply with all applicable law regarding providing a transit service. So we're talking about our Title VI issues. We're talking about low-speed vehicle requirements. You know, you may have seen certain, you know, I call them the cutesy golf cart taxis in various parts of the county. Those vehicles are most of the time considered low-speed vehicles. They can't operate on a street that has more than a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. You know, all of those requirements, the cities, again, it's the city's contractor and the city's vendor, they have to ensure that those things are going forward. Mr. Hooper.
How are you managing their ridership, and what if they're running a microtransit and the surtax is paying for it, and all we've got are drivers running around in empty golf carts, or you know, who knows what? What if it doesn't work?
Well, the cities, since they are using their formula-based funding that they could have been using for sidewalk maintenance, or
so they get this guaranteed.
They're receiving an annual budgeted amount that they use for R&M, and they can use it for microtransit or a mix thereof.
Fine.
And presumably, if they have a vendor and they've entered into a contract and they don't have riders, well, then they're going to want to go fix sidewalks next year. They're wasting their own money. So again, it sort of has built-in accountability for that purpose. I just want to see if there's really anything else that's worth the discussion at this point. Again, to one other thing, in future project cancellations. We do have projects that are in the pipeline that are going to need to go under a funding agreement at some point. We have provided for a more robust ability for the county to terminate projects if the cities just don't go under contract when those are ready. That also, assuming an ordinance change, would be something that after the county decision is made to terminate, the city can come here to ask for extra time before that termination goes into effect. And with that, I think I've covered pretty much all of the main points, and I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have. Mr. McElroy.
Sorry, Nathaniel, one quick question on the microtransit.
Yes, sir.
I'm not even sure if this is possible to get this data, but the microtransit data is very important. And hopefully if we sign these contracts, the municipalities sign these contracts with the microtransit operators, we get access to the data. Because if there's enough A to B pickup points, we can feed that data to BCT, and then we can create a fixed route service, and then which would just be more cost effective. But if we don't have that data, then we're missing out on, clearly we're missing out on good data.
I think that is a important issue, certainly something I'll discuss with county administration and with MAP administration, and it seems like something that the cities are going to want to do as well. These are all, as many asks that the cities have made or others make. Now, again, some of these microtransit operators, probably treat their data as their most valuable asset, and whether they provide it or not, again, is going to wind up being something that's in the contract between the city and a microtransit. We don't want to impose contractual requirements that the cities have to include that basically renders the ability to do microtransit meaningless because they just won't be able to find a provider. But it's certainly something that we could potentially include in the documents to strongly encourage them to try to include that in their agreements. But again, without preventing them from, if they have a need for microtransit, the question becomes, is the data more important than fulfilling the need, what they view as their need for microtransit? And that's a weighing policy-related issue that the cities are going to have to decide and the Board of County Commissioners have to decide when looking at the Third Amendment. But I very much appreciate that comment. We'll find some way to at least have that discussion with the cities.
Mr. Allen has a question.
Are we clear now that the delegations that you have advised us of does not create a position where we're acting as a elected officials, subject to the same lobbying restrictions, et cetera?
Again, the only element that comes before the oversight board that's different than its current role is whether to grant the additional 90-day extension. So,
okay.
In those particular circumstances, so I don't really have that concern. Mr. Allen, I'll look at it again. You may be, when the city comes before you, advised to disclose any conversations that the city may have had with you regarding that before the meeting, but we're not falling into the same level of silence or lobbying restrictions or things of that nature.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or any other comments that you have? And I would encourage you all, after you've had a chance to look at the term sheet, to feel free to call. And I'll be happy, I'll make myself available at your convenience if you have comments or questions or things that you at least would like to talk about individually, since we're not allowed to talk collectively except at these meetings. Please feel free. I'm well into the drafting process of this. It didn't make sense to finish the drafting process until we get that information back from the city to sort of fill in the last remaining things. But this is moving forward. There's a light at the end of the tunnel and/or bridge that is not a train. And it is the end of this agreement. So thank you all very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about it.
I think you guys have done so much, and this is not an easy negotiations, when you're dealing with other entities and governments, and quite a bit of progress. Looking forward to the term sheet and also conclusion of this, this phase. Thank
Nobody more so than me.
Ditto, thank you. All right, are we ready to move into non-agenda? Just a quick comment before I make my comment. I see this as an opportunity for these members to talk legally about things you want to talk about. So I would encourage you, if you don't have anything, to keep it in mind for the next meeting. I do have a report. I had asked, which we're going to pass out to the members. I had a mayor in Fort Lauderdale and a commissioner in Fort Lauderdale most recently make a comment about the fact that Fort Lauderdale was contributing millions of dollars to the Surtax program, but wasn't getting a lot of it back in the city. And I said to the commissioner and the mayor, I said, I think you're looking at this a little short-sighted. And I asked Gretchen to put together this table and document. And I'm just going to summarize it very quickly. The city of Fort Lauderdale, since 2019 to 2024, has contributed over $543 million in Surtax monies. Now, that doesn't mean it came from the residents. It's on taxes, people spending, tourists, everything. But that was a lot of money. And they felt, because they were only getting 3 or 4 projects in the city that they was approved as minimum, I think it's like $13.5 million. They were contributing a lot, but weren't getting anything back. Well, at the start of this meeting, I mentioned that 90% or less, really, of the Surtax money is being spent by the county in all of the cities. This particular table that you see here shows that Surtax funds have gone back to Fort Lauderdale are over the let's put it this way, are close to the $552 million that the city has contributed to date, $543 million. However, committed non-Surtax dollars matching per se are another $185 million going into the city of Fort Lauderdale. And the estimated project shortfall is $2.48 billion, which is going to come from somewhere else going into the city of Fort Lauderdale. Now, the city of Fort Lauderdale is not the only city that this is probably true of, because in theory, Hollywood is getting benefits, and so is Davie, because they're associated with the airport, Seaport, etc. But
I think we have to understand that the surtax dollars that the city is generating are coming back 3 to 6-fold in the long term. Also, I'm sure that there'll be even more. So I just wanted you to look at this. If you have a commissioner, and if you have a particular commissioner in a different city, and you want to ask Gretchen to look at that, that's fine. But I'm intending to circulate this to the commissions of Fort Lauderdale so that they don't go out there and keep saying they're not getting their fair share. So that's my comments, and I hope you enjoyed it. Any other member reports? Alan has one.
I forgot what it was. Can you remind me, or can you do it for me? I forgot. What was it?
We heard about different ways of.
And we weren't talking on the side, by the way. He said, when we were talking earlier about something in front of everybody, he said you should bring that up in public. So I didn't talk to him about, right? I did not.
Well,
it was something we talked about today.
As you know, I was involved in my earlier days in the beach replenishment on Fort Lauderdale and all that. And Gretchen's going, oh, no. I did talk to her about this, and she's going, you can't do that. I said, yes, you can. We don't have a lot of room left in the right-of-ways to do some of these things. And I know how difficult it is to permit things on our beach, specifically on our sand because of turtles and everything else. But if we need to think outside the box about, as Alan kind of always does, maybe we should give some long-term thought, and I can do this as a private citizen after this, right? We're all got so much going on at the beach between the traffic, the bicyclists. Maybe we need to think about using some of the sand on our Fort Lauderdale beach for transportation in that area. Can you imagine what would happen if it can be approved and done right? That you could ride a bicycle, walk a dog or whatever on the sand beach, not sand beach anymore, but in all that stretch could be another way. So I guess, where do we have her? Is Josette still here? I guess I need to be talking to her, or Ellen does. Anyway, any other members have anything? Well, of course, Raymond has something. Good.
Can we ask, and hopefully it's not too big of an ask for the BCT office, but would it be possible that we ask them to come to every meeting going forward? There's just so much money on the line and so much information with all the primo planning. I just want to stay on top of it so we don't get overwhelmed at any point. BCT, Corey, either Corey or someone who could speak for her behalf, just to constantly give us updates.
Yes, I can ask.
She's here quite often anyway, but I guess every meeting, maybe she can make it. Anybody else have any comments before we move into General Counsel report?
Mr. Chair, just inquiring, did we ever get a scope back from the auditor relative to the performance audit scope?
We did not.
Okay, can we maybe run the flag up to see where we're at on that?
I just did, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just spoke with them. We should be getting a, for your April meeting. I'll wait though. I'll add that. It's in my report. So if anybody else has anything first.
Mr. Kilsberg, do you have anything?
I do. Again, I appreciate the time, the questions, and the comments regarding the Third Amendment. It's something that I obviously talked to you all about at the first meeting that I was here for as we began our relationship at the beginning of 2024, end of 2023. Again, the goal for that, while wasn't able to reach it in year one, I think we are, again, at that finish line. I also had mentioned to you all at the end of last year that we were bringing on another attorney to the Surtax team. He joined us earlier this year at the beginning of in January. He's on the phone now. He had another matter earlier this morning to complete and was unable to be here, named Douglas Gonzalez. Doug is a very experienced municipal and local government attorney here in Broward County. Previously was the city attorney for the city of Hollywood, the city attorney for the city of Margate, a partner at one of the firms, Weisserota in Broward County, that represents a number of our municipalities. He's become a key member of our team and the MAP team as a whole. Is very much involved with and is going to continue to be involved with as we refine and hone the Third Amendment with the cities, and the perspective that he has coming from the municipal side of things has been very important up to this point, will continue to be important as we finish off that agreement. I just wanted to let you all know that he had joined the team and welcome him, and it's been fantastic having him. And especially somebody with the experience that he has and again, the knowledge base that he has coming from the municipalities, since so much of what we do is the interface with those cities, making sure that even though we may think that we are trying to do things looking in from their perspective, the perspective that he has is extraordinarily valuable to that. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Is he only working for the Surtax Oversight Board, or for MAP? I mean, MAP?
No, he is one of the. So the Surtax legal team provides legal representation not only to the Oversight Board and the municipal side of the Surtax, but also represents Broward County Transit and the Transportation Department, all of the agencies within the county that have funding from the Surtax. So when you see folks from Highway Construction and Engineering and they're talking about the Port Bypass Road, the drafting of the agreements for the Port Bypass Road are things that flow through our team.
So does the Surtax pay a portion of his salary?
He only works on matters where the Surtax.
That's what I meant.
Yes,
so
he is dedicated to Surtax-funded projects and agencies.
Okay, thank you.
I'd raise the same question. Your staff is growing, but the workload that we have is growing and going to continue to grow.
Yes, especially as BCT does more capital projects.
I was being very conscious of Surtax money and how many attorneys we had, okay? And I want to thank you, especially for the Third Amendment and being visionary with trying to. I think we have the cities going in the right direction, right?
I
hope they have us going in the right direction.
I think that. Again, we've had such a, please don't jinx anything, sir. But I think that we've had a very collaborative relationship with the cities. And again, a very creative, folks in MAP administration and in county administrator's office to be developing something that, again, goes a little bit outside the box of where we've been. But I've talked about the fact that we're at the point of this program being 5 years old. It's not, you could take the bumpers off, and start letting it roll.
Well, it's growing experience. Gretchen, I think you're last on the list.
So yes, and I will make this very brief, and I do very much respect those of you that have other places that you need to go, but we need to get some consensus from this group going forward regarding a few things. And so I'm going to just mention to you all that at our next meeting in April, we have a very packed agenda. So I want you to be prepared, especially if we're going to add BCT to it. We have the nomination of our chair and our vice chair, so please be thinking of that. We do have a mandatory ethics training that you all have to do every year. We have our external financial audit that will be here. So that team that comes and does their update to you. We will have the internal auditors that will be providing an overview of their Surtax scope and the engagement plan that they have for the entire Surtax program, as well as what they came and talked to you about. We have a presentation from FDOT, District 4, as well as our Traffic Engineering Division on all of their innovative traffic system management and operations. So that's the TSM&O update they came to you back in 2019. They do this every 5 years. And we have also been asked by several of you to do a state and federal legislative update focused on grant funding. So that's on the agenda. Third Amendment updates, and now BCT. So I wanted you all to know that that is and it's a long meeting. We'll break, we'll have lunch, then we'll do the ethics training afterwards as typically. We did have, that's April 25th. April 25th. I know we need to adjourn before I have the next conversation, so I will wait until we adjourn, and then I have one more thing for you.
Gretchen?
Sir?
Am I on?
You are.
We had discussed the possibility of exempting ourselves from the.
Wait. No, that's not right now. That's for that. That's coming up next. We are going to have that conversation, but we need to adjourn first.
Oh, okay. Or am I going to lose contact?
Excuse me. I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. Debbie? So we're going to adjourn the meeting, February 25th at 2:27 p.m.